In the last three parts of the series, we began building a timeline. We started with how Candace Owens first entered the public space, the content that brought her attention, and the early moments that drew people in. Then we moved into the period where that rapid rise began to attract scrutiny, where other voices started questioning the patterns in her messaging and the narrative surrounding her. And by the last episode, those questions were no longer subtle. They were specific, documented, and increasingly difficult to ignore. But in this part of the story, something shifts again. Because this is where Candace Owens moves from being an independent voice online to becoming part of something much bigger, an organization, a movement, a brand. And with that shift comes a new set of questions about why she was elevated so quickly, about the role she was meant to play, and about what happens when politics, influence, and money all start intersecting. In this episode, we're going to look at that period where Candace Owens joins Turning Point USA and the launch of initiatives like Blexit and the controversies that begin to follow, including questions about funding, messaging, and the people around her. We'll also continue working through part 3 of the Candace Owens Undone series. Because by this point in the timeline, it's not only about the rise anymore, it's about what was built around it and what may have been driving it behind the scenes. This is part 4. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I hope everyone's doing well. So we're continuing on with our timeline we have going on with Candace Owens, and this is episode 4. And I hope everyone's really enjoying these episodes. People seem to be really engaged with them, which makes me really happy and excited. And so let's just go ahead and get into it and do this. So I made an infographic. I put this together just so we can have sort of an idea in our head as we're going forward. So in 2017, that's when she hooked up with Turning Point USA. So she joins as a director of urban engagement and communications director from 2017 to 2019. She promoted conservative values on college campuses with Charlie and Brandon Tatum. She first started with Turning Point. Then, while she was still with Turning Point, she started Blexit. Okay, so let me pull up. Okay, so I'm going to read to you a little bit how she got started with Turning Point USA. We're going to start there. Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk met in 2017 at a political conference in Florida. Some accounts specify an event connected to David Horowitz at the Freedom Center. At the same time, Owens had recently gained attention for her conservative commentary, including a viral video responding to the Charlottesville events, and Kirk, then building the still young Turning Point USA, heard her speak and was impressed by her energy, vision, and ability to connect with audiences. Kirk hired her on the spot as Director of Urban Engagement and Communications Director. She joined tpusa in 2017 and worked there until 2019, during which they traveled extensively, speaking on college campuses across the U.S. and Canada as part of Turning Point USA's efforts to promote conservative ideas among young people. In her own words, Owens has described the meeting as the start of a very close working friendship. She noted that both were relatively unknown at the time, and Kirk immediately saw potential in her to help expand Turning Point's reach, particularly in engaging Black and urban audiences. They quickly became frequent collaborators on campus tours and events, which helped elevate both their profiles in conservative media circles. This connection directly led to the next phase of her career with Turning Point USA. Their relationship was professional and friendly during their time at Turning Point USA, though public attention has occasionally speculated on it due to how much time they spent together on the roads early on. Candace has consistently spoken of Kirk as a mentor and friend during that time. I had actually seen that somebody else introduced them, and it was another guy. It wasn't David Horowitz. Let's see if I can find that. Alas, the ever-shifting narratives. I can't find the name of that guy I originally saw when I first searched this months ago, but maybe I'll find it eventually. I did find this looking, so this is what this says. The specific person often accredited with discovering Candace Owens and facilitating her introduction to Charlie Kirk is Andrew Colvett. At the time, Colvett was a key staffer and spokesperson for Turning Point USA. He first encountered Owens after her Red Pill Black YouTube videos began to gain traction in mid-2017. Recognizing her potential as a powerful communicator for the movement, Colvett reached out to her and eventually brought her to meet Charlie Kirk. That's interesting. Now, it says that he hired her on the spot for outreach to Black conservatives. I actually have some interesting stuff we can go over on that. So one of the things that was going on around the time that Candace got hired was that Turning Point was actually being accused of racism because of several things that had happened. So let me pull up the information on that. Okay, so the accusations that Turning Point USA had issues with racism weren't tied to a single event. They were built up over time from several controversies, including individuals, messaging, and campus culture. So there was this professor watch list controversy from 2016 to 2017. TPUSA created a professor watch list that named professors accused of liberal bias or anti-American values. Critics argued it disproportionately targeted minority and left-leaning academics. It could lead to a harassment or intimidation. TPUSA's response said it was about accountability and free speech, not race. This was one of the earliest things that put them on the radar as controversial. Repeated campus incident allegations. Over the years, there were multiple reports, not always verified the same way, involving TPUSA chapters or members. Students accused of making racist or inflammatory comments, controversial social media posts tied to individuals affiliated with TPUSA. That's like probably the main one that was going on. So their response to all this was internal diversity push. In response to criticism, TPUSA promoted figures like Candace Owens, launched initiatives aimed at Black and Hispanic outreach, and supported projects like Blexit. We are going to watch another Tree of Logic video. We're just listening to what people were saying back then. And so Tree of Logic is a conservative, but she's much of her own sort of brand of conservatism that can be sort of inflammatory and everything, but or at least that's how she was back then. I haven't seen any of her new content, but I did leave her new YouTube channel in the description of the last video, and I will do that with this one as well. So we're going to watch one of her videos of what she said. It's not going to be very flattering of Charlie Kirk, just warning for everybody. Okay, so this video is called Candace Owens, Leader of the Conservative Plantation. Let me pull it up.
So the inevitable has happened. President Donald Trump tweeted his support and praise of Candace Owens and Turning Point USA. I have no problem telling you how disappointed I am in my president. I knew he was disconnected from the Black community and he had no idea how to communicate with them, but this was ridiculous. When it comes to winning the approval of the Black community, President Trump doesn't have a clue, especially when he thought that promoting Kanye West instead of James Shaw Jr. was a smart idea. So President Trump decided that the best way to gain the trust and support of the Black community is by promoting a rich, mentally deranged law cow like Kanye West instead of a brave, generous Black man from humble beginnings like James Shaw Jr. But it gets even better. You see, in the conservative movement, there are lots of Black conservatives, but truth be told, many of us are not active in the Black community. However, there are 2 Black female conservatives who are not only heavily involved in the Black community, but they are strong advocates for Black empowerment nationwide. The first is Sunny Johnson, radio host of Sunny's Corner on Sirius XM, and Did She Say That podcast on Breitbart.com. The second is Shirley Hussar, CEO of Urban Game Changer and social media mogul on Facebook and Twitter. Both of these ladies have been conservative for well over 10 years, and they understand the culture, religion, economics, and mindset of the Black community. So if President Trump was sincere in his quest to connect to Black people,
Okay, so that's going to be really important when we go forward with this video, what she's saying there. These people are able to connect to Black culture because they are, in Black culture, and they are conservatives. And there's going to be more people who talk about that specific thing. So keep that in mind for in the future.
He would reach out to one, if not both of these Black female conservatives for assistance. But did he? No. Instead, he promoted a clever opportunist who was not only a Bernie supporter, but a liberal who never liked Trump in the first place. That these tweets from Candace Owens' old Twitter account are archived, so they are very authentic. On May the 9th, President Trump tweeted the following. Candace Owens of Turning Point USA is having a big impact on politics in our country. She represents an ever-expanding group of very smart thinkers, and it is wonderful to watch and hear the dialogue going on. So good for our country. Aw, too bad Candace doesn't feel the same way about you, President Trump. You see, during the presidential elections, Candace Owens didn't want you to be president. Like her friend Joy Villa, who supported Bernie and thought all Trump supporters were stupid, Candace Owens also thought little of you by calling you a reckless idiot. Honey, let me show you these receipts. I'm going for Bernie. Would be hysterical to see him and Trump in the race. Watch the institutions on the sidelines. Hashtag never Hillary. Sean Jensen tweeted, been following you since your Kickstarter was killed. But seriously, never is a very big word. You would vote Trump over Hillary? Candace replied, I do not like Trump, but I do not trust the Clintons. You're asking me to choose between corruption and stupidity. Just in case you missed that, Candace referred to the Clintons as the corrupt ones while saying,
Okay, so I think that's really important because she was on the left, but she didn't like the Clintons. That is another clue of how conspiratorial she was even way back then. Before I was political, I also didn't like the Clintons. Why? Because I'm a conspiracy theorist. There's so many conspiracies against them, right? They have like the body count thing, the Rose Law Firm thing, the Mena, Arkansas thing. So there's so much stuff surrounding them in the conspiracy world. So I found that a really interesting point there. Because I think she's always been super, super conspiratorial, like we were learning about in the last episode.
And that Donald Trump was the stupid one. The Prophet tweeted, I don't think he's stupid, but if you do, stupid can be managed with advisors, staff, rules, etc. Corruption cannot. Candace replied, Donald Trump is reckless. You make a decent point otherwise, which is why I started the hashtag Never Hillary. And this goes on and on. There's a long list of tweets from Candace Owens trashing and belittling President Trump. All of her tweets are available on archive.is website. You see, Candace Owens is a notorious liar and a fraud. She was always a liberal. However, she quickly discovered that when it comes to thirsty white people who are desperately looking for Black acceptance and approval, she would find them in abundance on the conservative side. And thus her quest for fortune and fame as a conservative began. The manipulative, money-hungry CEO of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, made Candace Owens his spokeswoman and director of communication for the Black community. I'm sorry, I can never say that with a straight face. Charlie and Candace have teamed up to run a scam called the Black Leadership Fund, and this scam is being implemented through their Young Black Leadership Summit 2018. I'll explain more about this in detail in another video, because this scam is pretty extensive and very gutsy if you ask me. But for now, I'm going to share with you Candace Owens' backstory so that you can see how the Republican masses picked her as their new overseer for the conservative plantation. So let's begin. Candace Owens has nothing in common with Black Americans here who are descendants of slaves. You see, unlike me and other Blacks I know, Candace's ancestors were never slaves. As a matter of fact, Candace never labeled herself as Black or African American unless it fits her victim narrative. You see, her grandparents immigrated here to America from the Virgin.
Okay, so remember, I don't know if I played it, but in that video of the interview with her cousin, that it's in the very first episode, I believe. It's in the first or the second. It was an interview with her cousin, and in that interview, her cousin says we're more white than we are Black, and that Candace considered herself more white than Black.
Islands during the late 50s. Both of her grandparents' ancestry traced back to France, not Africa, because her ancestors were white. Before Candace became famous as a Black conservative, she freely posted pictures and the full names of her grandparents, parents, and older sister on Facebook. And thanks to the information provided by her extensive family on websites like Ancestry.com, I was able to track her heritage, which was very bright. Unfortunately, Candace deleted all this information from her Facebook page, and I can see why. It would be damn near impossible to play the race card when your ancestors were never slaves or Black. Candace is privileged, very privileged. She comes from lots of money, and she grew up in a white gated community located in Stamford, Connecticut. All of Candace's neighbors were white. All of her friends were white. Every boyfriend and lover Candace ever had were white. She never had Black friends. She never had relations with a Black man. As a matter of fact, the only Black people that were around Candace during her youth was to help. Everything Candace wanted, her father provides for her. She never had to want for anything then and now. However, there's one thing that her father couldn't buy her, and that was fame. Candace desperately wanted to be an actress and dancer. Here's her online actor profile. Notice here where she labels her ethnicity Caribbean, not Black. Remember, she will never identify as Black unless it fits her victim narrative. Candace attended hundreds of auditions, but was never called back for a second follow-up. I guess her daddy's money couldn't buy her talent either. Since she was a major flop in the entertainment business, she decided to take on a new project to gain her money and fame. Doxing. 3 weeks later, she deletes her second Twitter account and then goes away until October the 20th, where she gives a liberal speech to an empty audience on TED Talks in reference to activism. Candace tried to break into the entertainment business and failed miserably. She became an SJW feminist who tried to raise over $75,000 for her doxing site and failed at that too. When she realized that playing the race card was not working this time, she went into hiding to regroup. Candace realized that her options of being famous were running out, and since she couldn't accomplish this goal on the left, she knew one political side that would buy into her quick, fast, and in a hurry: the conservative side. So she teamed up with Mike Cernovic, who gave her the name Red Pill Black, and the rest was history. Let's go over it. During the month of June 2017, Candace Owens took her old YouTube channel that was created in 2015 and scrubbed it of all her liberal videos. A month later, on July the 9th, she uploaded her first video called Mom, Dad, I'm a Conservative, under her new name, Red Pill Black, making quick videos using conservative talking points from various Black conservative YouTubers. There is nothing unique or original about her videos, and even though it takes at least a year for us to get noticed organically here on YouTube, Candace Owens' daddy was able to pay conservatives to move his daughter up the Republican ladder. The first person to promote Candace Owens was Paul Joseph Watson on August 29, 2017. Now, even though Paul wrote an exposed article on Candace in reference to her doxing website back in 2016, he suddenly had a change of heart now that he was getting paid. When it comes to conservatism, money can buy you lots of things, including a short memory. Soon afterwards, on September the 14th, she appeared with Paul on InfoWars with Alex Jones. Alex Jones loved her lives so much that he invited her back onto his show September the 5th and September the 6th. The alt-right's darling Stephen Molyneux interviewed her on September the 10th, with Jacob Airy writing a feature article about her on the DailyWire.com website 7 days later. On September the 23rd, Jesse Waters interviewed her on Fox News, followed by Andrew Klavan, and then on September the 28th, Dave Rubin, aka
I agree with that,
interviewed her for his show, The Rubin Report. And yes, he agreed with every dumb thing she said. Candace Owens, aka Red Pill Black, was now a hit. She found a group of suckers on the conservative side to play identity politics. Now remember, identity politics was never our thing as conservatives until Candace came along. Now during this time, I, along with a small group of other conservatives, did fall for Candace's games, and so I decided to investigate her. 3 weeks later, I had all the evidence I needed to prove that this woman was a fraud. So on October 22nd, I sent a tweet to Candace telling her that I did a thorough investigation on her and that she was not a conservative. I asked her to prove me wrong and offered to interview her. Candace knew I was a former police officer, and she also knew that I was nothing with. So instead of accepting my invitation to an interview, she resorted to her favorite go-to tactic, playing the race card. There are things I admire about every group of people. For example, Jewish people stick together. They promote, help, and hire one another. One of the saddest things about Black community is that they do just the opposite. I've never understood it. It's hate, jealousy, and envy. So instead of responding back to me on Twitter, which she refused to do, or declining my offer to an interview, she resorted to the Black people never stick together narrative. How the hell would you know? Oh, and please stop thinking that everybody who opposes your ass is jealous of you. Child, please, you are not all that. So since she refused to talk, debate, or discuss her true intentions with me, I released my video the following day titled, Candace Owens wants to dox us for saying mean words. And that's when all hell broke loose.
Okay, so I don't know for sure if that's exactly why they hired Candace Owens and then started all these initiatives to reach out to Black people. Like, we can't really know what was in their heads. It's just, or that could have been one reason out of a multitude of reasons. Like, they just wanted to reach out to Black people to bring them into the conservative party, coalition, whatever. But I found that really interesting because that was a big thing back then, where conservatives were constantly being called racist all the time. So it would make sense that in their minds, they would want to do something to mitigate that, which would then result in, unfortunately, picking Candace Owens when there were other people that could have been picked that were much better, I feel like. So let's go back to our infographic. Okay, so in 2018, while she was still with Turning Point USA, she started Blexit. So she co-founded Blexit Foundation with Brandon Tatum. So it was a movement launched to encourage Black Americans to exit the Democratic Party. Now, what I found really interesting about this is that there's all kinds of controversies going on with Blexit. And then eventually Blexit had to merge with Turning Point USA. I have some really interesting information on that topic that I've dug up. So let me pull up some information on that. Okay, so Blexit is the conservative movement and nonprofit foundation funded by Candace around 2018. Its goal was to encourage Black Americans to leave the Democratic Party. It started with rallies and gained traction amid racial justice protests, raising millions in donations, mostly from wealthy conservative donors, including some white billionaires and foundations tied to Turning Point USA. The main controversies you're asking about are not showing up, running the money into the ground, and flying private on donor funds stem from long-standing accusations of financial mismanagement at the Blexit Foundation. These claims were first reported years ago via IRS Form 990 filings, public nonprofit tax records, and have been resurfaced multiple times, most recently in late of 2025 by former Blexit employee staff. Okay, so financial mismanagement. Early on, 2020, Brexit raised big money, over $7 million at peak per some reports, but donations dropped sharply in 2021. Owens' compensation stayed high or increased, $230,000 to $250K salary in 2020 to 2021 plus benefits. Even as the organization's income slumped, other big expenses included hundreds of thousands on professional fundraising fees, security, and travel. A former Blexit volunteer staffer who worked there went public in a video around December 2025. They alleged that the organization ran annual deficits of about $1 million and a $1.7 million loss in 2022 specifically. Spending included $250K salary to Owens, $350K on security, $800K on social media fundraising, and quotation marks. The staffer claimed Blexit was negative by $1 million every year, while Owens was still taking high pay and other perks. In 2023, tpusa, Charlie's organization, reportedly took over Blexit operations because it was so poorly managed. Critics, including the ex-employees, say this looks like the nonprofit was being used more as a vehicle for Owens personally than for the mission. Owens and supporters have pushed back on some of these narratives, noting that some expenses like travel were disclosed in the public filings and justified at the time. Flying private. IRS filings from 20 to 2021 explicitly list significant spending on first class and charter private jet travel, over $1 million on travel in 2020 alone, and hundreds of thousands of more in 2021. The filings justified some of it as pre-approved charter travel for urgent fundraising business needs during COVID flight restrictions. The same ex-staffer directly accused Owens of charging private jet flights to Blexit donor funds for her appearances at Blexit rallies and events. They questioned how much of the money was essentially subsidizing her personal travel style. She's known for using private jets often. This has been a reoccurring point of criticism, donor money going to luxury travel while the organization was reportedly in the red. 3, she didn't show up. This ties directly into the ex-staffers' allegations. They claimed Owen wasn't showing up to most Blexit events, only appearing at a handful of major legit rallies. Despite supposedly working 30 hours a week for Blexit in 2022, she was very active on social media, but rarely promoted or engaged with Blexit there. And if you guys remember, Graham Allen put out a video a little while back where he said he had to often fill in, or there were times when she was supposed to be there and her name was on the stage for like Turning Points events and stuff, but she just didn't show up. More recently, October 2025, during Blexit's Educate to Liberate HBCU campus homecoming tour, Owens canceled her own scheduled appearance at Florida A&M University homecoming at the last minute. No clear public reason given. Organizers said a new date would be announced. Other tour stops had a very low turnout. Students and alumni largely didn't show up, ignored the events, or treated them as tone deaf during celebratory homecoming weeks. At Hampton University, Blexit reps were reportedly escorted off campus for not following proper vendor application rules. The university said it wasn't censorship, just policy enforcement. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go look at some stuff that people have said about Blexit, shall we?
Candace is extremely angry and vindictive as a person. I know this from personal experiences with her. Candace also owes me money, speaking of which. She owes me reimbursement for when I brought Brandon Tatum and several other people to Blexit. They were supposed to pay for my hotel. They promised me they would pay for my hotel. They did not pay for my hotel. And you're like, well, what do you care? You got money now. That's fine. I didn't have money then. Would have been nice, though. I made posts for Blexit. I was in the founding meeting for Blexit. I was never recognized for my work on Blexit. But you know what? It is what it is. We're also going to just ignore the fact that Candace tried to poach donors from tpusa to donate to Blexit, even though Blexit was objectively a failure since there was no measurable increase in Black voters that could be tied directly to Blexit, and it was in direct competition with the president's actual Black Voices for Trump organization. Candace's career began at Turning Point, but prior to that, she kind of did social media as like a moderate leftist, and she had some situation with Social Autopsy, which was like a doxing website. Excuse me, the left canceled her for the doxing website, and she came over to the right. Her first job was with Turning Point. She was the communications director until she got fired.
Okay, so I found that interesting, especially the part where he talks about how there was no recognizable outcome for the Blexit movement with Black people. So there was no recordable moving of them to the conservative side. So I found that really interesting because people were donating all this money to it and it didn't seem to be doing what they were wanting it to do. So anyway, and I have heard that from other people as well, not just him. I have some other things. Okay, let's see what this video has to say.
Oh, Candace, this is not looking good. Were you stealing money from Blexit, your own organization that you created to get, Black people to leave the Democratic plantation? Now, it's been argued on whether or not that Blexit actually worked. Now, I think more or less more Black people were frustrated with the Democratic Party, and so they decided not to vote, whether it increased the numbers of Black Republicans. I think more or less Trump has always got between 11 to 12% of the vote. So I don't think that really changed too much, but I digress. But anyway, there's a former volunteer and former employee who's exposing the numbers. And believe it or not, Blexit was not making any money, you guys. I mean, it was kind of obvious, but was Candace basically taking money from the organization to use it for her own personal gain? Let's go ahead and get into this video. But first, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it, you guys. And this woman right here her name is Callie. Now, her husband, Joshua, doesn't speak too much because he's actually still under NDA, and he used to work for Blexit. He was a part of he was a regional manager for the West Coast of Blexit. Now, he's not Black, so I'm not understanding how he was, but he married to a Black woman, so maybe that's how, but hey, I digress. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into this video, you guys. Hit that like button, all that good stuff.
Knowledge that the stuff that I'm going to show you right now, because I work 2 regular jobs. My husband and I, we run an online school, but I also work as a researcher. And I write articles about nonprofits, and I know how to research nonprofits. A lot of people don't do that. When they go to donate to a nonprofit, they just think, oh, it's doing good work. Here's money. And of course, Candace is very upset at Turning Point USA right now, and is upset that they're profiting off of Charlie Kirk's death. She's mentioned that many times. They've made over $100 million since this year, and she has demanded transparency from them. She has demanded them to share everything that all the questions that she wants to be answered. She wants them to answer. But again, she requires all of her employees to sign non-disclosure agreements. And I'm sure tpusa has that as well. There's an active investigation happening right now into Charlie Kirk's assassination. There's a lot of reasons why these people can't talk. And also they're not obligated to talk to her. They don't have to, right? But she demands that. And she's saying, the reason why they aren't answering her is because there's something going on. There's something nefarious. Charlie was betrayed. She claims that Charlie showed up to her in a dream and said that he was betrayed. So there's a lot going on there. And if you have been following this, she's done over, I don't know, it's been like 30 videos or something. There's been a lot of videos every week about this, and her platform has grown.
Mind you, this was 2 months ago. This was before the new Erica Kirk documentary that Candace Owens is doing. So this is really interesting that this really didn't gain any traction.
Since then, all of her videos are monetized. Obviously, she's making money off of this, but she has not shared how much. But she wants to know how much tpusa is sharing. Yeah. Well, I'm going to show you guys that Blexit, Candace Owens' organization that she was president of, also may have some funding issues. And this is very easy to look up. You can go to propublica.org and you can look up any nonprofit in this country. And I highly recommend people doing this because you learn a lot from these, from what they have to disclose to the public. And Blexit, I don't know if you guys know this, but Candace Owens' organization, her nonprofit, was taken over by tpusa, or she handed them over to handed Blexit over to tpusa in 2023. Before that, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know details on that. I don't want to. No matter.
So as I've seen it, it was a merger. Now I don't know if Candace did get any pay, because actually on the 2023 tax return, it doesn't show what she got for, as far as salary. So again, that's a little bit debated on whether or not maybe she got paid from Turning Point once the merger happened, but it was recognized as a merger. So.
What tpusa took it over because it was in trouble. Blexit was $1 million, $1.7 million in the hole. And Blexit, you can go to ProPublica and you can look this stuff up. This is 2023, the last year that was underneath Candace Owens as president, and it had $275K in revenue. The expenses were $1.3 million. So she was operating it at a loss. This is in 2021. This is 2 years before. It was $3.3 million in expenses, and she also was operating it that year at a loss. 2022, again, another $1 million at a loss. 3 years in a row, $1 million. And even higher than that in 2022. I'll show you guys that from the tax form at a loss. Where's this money going? Why are you running a nonprofit and running it into the ground, claiming to do work for African Americans? But where is this money truly going? And 3 years in a row, you're operating it, and you're going in the millions, losing money in this.
Before she exposes that, because it's very interesting, you guys pay attention. In 2020, that was actually the only year that it was profitable. That was like at the peak of MAGA right there in 2020. Even though Trump ended up losing the election that year, that was like the peak right there in 2020. This is when Blexit was going very heavy. Candace Owens was very involved. So that's interesting that that was the most profitable year right there. Let's continue.
Profit. And she was raising money as well. And again, I don't have a team behind me. This is just me and my own research and what I know on how to research nonprofits. So here's 2022. They operated at a loss of 1.7 million that year. They were just spending money left and right in 2022. And what were they spending it on? Well, first there was Candace Owens' salary, which was $250,000 that year in 2022. And you can also look where she stated that her average hours per week that she worked for Blexit was 30 hours. Great. Awesome. That is so amazing, Candace, that you were giving 30 hours a week to Blexit. But there's a problem here. This is also the same year that she started, or that she was doing her Daily Wire show. And this brings questions for me as someone who worked for Blexit and was in Blexit with my husband. I don't see where she was giving that 30 hours a week to Blexit and getting that.
Ooh, and mind you, with that Daily Wire show, that was a daily show that she was filming and doing. So like at the same time, how are you spending so many hours on Blexit, and what are you actually doing for that company? Because now you're a political pundit. You're a star now. You're not really out there in the field trying to get people out. Like, and mind you, she got married, having babies, and there's nothing wrong with that. But are you actually invested in putting your time in like that? Or was the spotlight more important? She makes a good point.
$250,000 payment. Why? Where her time was where she was doing that time, because she wasn't showing up at any of the events that we were having, except if it was a speaking Blexit rally, which would happen maybe 3 or 4 times a year, if that.
Yeah. All those events are public. You can see where she was at.
Her Daily Wire show, when she first came out with it, it was a very extensively produced show where it was, she had interviews and she had, guests, and she had, I don't know if you guys watched her Daily Wire show when it first came out, but it was like this really extensive show. It wasn't just her talking in a microphone and doing a podcast. She was also having kids at the same time. And then on her tax form saying that she's giving Blexit 30 hours a week of average work.
For $250,000 a year.
For $250,000 a year. Now, some of you might go to me, oh yeah, okay, I believe that. I believe she was doing 30 hours a week for Blexit. Well, I'd like to hear that from her. I want to know, because she's accusing tpusa of taking in money and enriching themselves with donor funds, the employees of that, and actually not doing the work of tpusa's mission. And she's accused Kimberly Eclectic of doing that with, having fun with donor funds, doing, whatever she wants with her campaign funds, right? So Candace, were you actually giving 30 hours of your time every week to Blexit in 2022? I just had that question. Am I allowed to ask that question? I hope I am, because I don't believe you were doing that. I believe that you weren't giving 30 hours a week to Blexit just because I work with Blexit and I know what these events were like and I know what was being accomplished. At least, especially you can't share a lot about it, but you were a regional director.
You don't even need to public events, which one she was at and which one she wasn't. You don't even need special info for me.
So did she lie about doing her 30 hours a week? That's
just asking questions, right?
Just asking questions, right?
So that's really interesting, especially how they're tying it to what she's saying about Erica Kirk, because like I keep saying, everything she says about Erica Kirk is just projection, or even other people she attacks, which we're going to go through on this video. A lot of it is projection. That's what people like that do.
Okay, I want to go back to this right here. So also, it's interesting to note that Brandon Tatum, he would show up at events more than Candace, and he only put average hours of 5 hours per week and was only compensated $36,000. So something to think about. So here's where a lot of the money was going to. You can see here that it was going to Optimize Consulting, which is $500,000 to the social media fundraising company. It went $349,000 of it went to security. So again, this is 2022, the year she's doing her Daily Wire show. $349,000 went to security. She also went to Olympic Media, $284,000 to another social media fundraising group.
So again, when we talk about like the bots and all this pro MAGA, pro Trump, and all these Black influencers that you see in supporting MAGA, all of a sudden, can we not believe that they were paid to do that?
Help African Americans lead the Democrat Party and to enlighten them and help them to, the mission of Blexit was not social media fundraising. And also, again, where was the social media fundraising going? I'm just asking questions because I don't see on the as far as what I know about Blexit, I don't see that almost $800,000 being used for social media fundraising, especially with such a small overall budget.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm just asking questions. Where you demand transparency from tpusa, you demanded transparency from Kimberly Eclectic. Where's the transparency from you? And also, this was a year where she ran, again, here's that same year, $389,000 on travel. I do know that Candace Owens was using private jets to go to the Blexit rallies. So how much of that money was going towards Candace's private jets? Again, was this a way for her to pay for her security through her?
Something else that she's mentioning here, but I found on my own. Her husband was ahead of the Turning Point UK, the version in the United Kingdom, right? Well, he was also the treasurer for Blexit. He's listed right underneath. Now, it doesn't say his salary, but he's listed right underneath Brandon Tatum. This is very interesting to me because this lets me know, so your husband was even in on it. Because in the tax form, it talks about how the only 2 people that have relations with each other is George Farmer and Candace Owens, as far as family, because they're married, right? So that's interesting. Your husband is the treasurer. Give you some. Hey, just like Callie said, we're just asking questions
through her nonprofit instead of paying for it herself. That's a very high security bill, $349,000. Is this a way for her to pay for private jets to travel? Because she does use private jets to travel often, and I know that because she would travel with private jets to rallies that we went to, and so that's $389,435 for travel, conferences, conventions, and meetings, $518,000. That could be some of the Blexit rally cost. Cool. Let's see some transparency on that. And then again, she was operating Blexit at a loss every year. There's $925,000 they were in the hole in 2021, I believe, and at the end of 2022, they were $1.7 million in the hole, and in 2023, I think it was another $1 million, and that's when tpusa took over Blexit. She handed it over to tpusa, and now she's trying to destroy tpusa. Yeah. I'm laughing about this because it's like, I just want transparency from her, because if you're gonna claim transparency, everybody else has to answer your questions. Here's where, and we only have about 15 more minutes. Here's where I have a problem. So I just watched Candace's recent video where she is talking about Erica Kirk, and the moment when Erica Kirk goes to Charlie's casket and she cries, and everyone has dogged Erica for doing that. They think it's so weird. They think it's awful. They think it's like her trying to get attention. We don't know these people personally. I don't think that Charlie and Erica are normal people. I think Charlie, I've met him a few times in my life. I wish I could go longer into the interactions I've had with him, which I will maybe in another video. He wasn't a normal person.
No, I definitely. These people are.
That is something that I have been wanting to talk about. We haven't really got to Erica Kirk and all that in the series yet. But I do find it really odd how graceless people are towards her. Oftentimes when somebody dies, especially very traumatic like that, people do weird stuff. So, has nobody been around grieving people? They do very odd things. When my sister, her husband, she did some really weird stuff. Okay? She said some really weird stuff. I remember one time we had to go to, this was just days after it happened because her husband died unexpectedly from cancer. So he was diagnosed with cancer, and then like a week later he was dead. And she was 27 and they had an 8-year-old. They were both 27 and they had an 8-year-old son. And I was on my way there to help because we found out he had cancer. And by the time I was like literally on my way, she said I needed to pick up my nephew from the hospital. I did that. And then I went to their apartment, and then hours later she came home and collapsed on the floor because he died. And it was very traumatic because they were trying to bring him back in the hospital for like quite a long time, and she saw all that. We had to go out to get supplies, and she wanted to go by Verizon to see if they could save his voicemail. Like, she has to shut off his phone plan, but she wants to save the voicemail. If I remember correctly, that's what we went there for. And then they were asking her why she has this person's phone, right? Like, why are you trying to shut off his service and all this stuff? And then she just looks at them deadpan and goes, he died. He's dead. He's effing dead. So just no emotion, no nothing, just deadpan. And I looked at her and they looked at me and I was like, I don't. So people do weird stuff when people die. Grief is really, really weird. Okay. And then also we're talking about people that are not your average normal people. Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk, all the people that work for them, they're not normal people. They're pageantry people. They're CEO people. Okay. These people have a different worldview. They act differently than we do. Okay. So yeah, they're going to be different. Also, people have different worldviews and ideas when it comes to death. So some people, like the Irish, they have these wakes where they like celebrate. Everybody gets drunk, beats each other up, who knows, laughing at one moment, crying at the next moment. People are coming by, stopping by all throughout, like however long the wake is. So there's different views on death amongst the cultures, amongst different people. So for some people, touching your loved one in the casket is not weird. Okay. Like, I've heard stories of people doing that when their child dies or whatever. And then she said she wanted people who were mourning and grieving to see that, to help them with their grieving. And she probably wasn't thinking clearly. You know what I'm saying? Like, how can you have no grace for this woman? It's literally insanity to me. It makes no sense. Yes, she's weird. She's a pageant woman. Pageant girls are different and weird. Who cares? It's America. You're allowed to be weird and strange. It doesn't make any sense to me to treat her that way. It's disgusting. It's not charitable. It's not loving. It's very odd. Anyway, rant over.
They're larger than life in some ways.
Yeah,
they're
and they're different. And I think that Charlie chose someone who's different. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
I do think that.
And you know what's interesting too is because I thought Charlie Kirk was more heavily involved with Blexit, but he honestly wasn't. Candace, Brandon Tatum, and a few other people, they were more heavily involved with Blexit. And again, all that, oh, we at the White House and wearing red MAGA hats and all this other stuff, like, what did it really accomplish? Because at the end of the day, now Candace is apolitical. She's like, screw the system, screw both parties. But now that Blexit has been taken over from Turning Point USA, what's interesting is now it's called Rise. And Rise is about Hispanic, Asian, and Black people, joining the Republican Party. So they called it I think it's called We Rise now, if I'm correct. It's called We Rise. So what's interesting about that is that now it just combined all the minorities together and just make them one. I actually have the website here. Hold on. Because, I don't like to give you guys misinformation. I want to give y'all the most accurate information, especially this one, because I know the Candace fans are very crazy and they're very loyal to her too. Again, we just asking questions, right? So here's the website, you guys. Let me blow it up bigger. So here we go. So Turning Point USA Rise is the largest minority conservative grassroots movement in the nation. Rise exists to strengthen families and reclaim culture within minority America through high energy events, authentic community outreach, and inspiring educational initiatives. We empower Black, Hispanic, Asian, and all minority communities to rise above division and embrace faith, family, and freedom. So then they got some videos from a few people. They have a live event April 1st. So yeah, this is how Blexit is now. And again, Callie's husband, Joshua, he couldn't go into detail on what happened with Blexit on his end. So I'm very curious now, because what I want to do is start looking up to see, like, okay, well, does anybody have a Blexit story? I want to tell you guys real quickly, too. The interesting about Blexit was that it was actually started by another woman named Malia, right? Malia had actually started Blexit. And yes, it did come from the Brexit, which, that was the thing over in the UK. But Blexit was started after...
Oh, I didn't know he went into this. I have information on this that we're going to go over. So this is really interesting. So Candace Owens stole the idea of Blexit allegedly from another person.
And Castro got murdered, right? And so what happened was that she wanted Black people to take economic power on their own, take the initiative and go outside the system. And we support each other and build Black wealth, Black capital, and we take our money and invest it into our own community. Then Candace came and co-opted it or appropriated it in 2019. I have been trying to find information on Malia to see where she is, if I can probably get an interview with her, but I can't find any information on her. So it's very interesting how Candace even stole that whole idea. And it's like, man, there's something here, you guys. There is something here. And I believe that a lot of people had their hands in the pot and Blexit, because again, I don't know if their message was actually successful. Did it help? Now Candace is talking about like she can't stand either party. She's not down with it, whatever, so forth and so forth. So who's ahead of Blexit? Like, who's taking over? Very interesting. But anyway, you guys, let me know what you think. Do you think that Candace had her hands in the pot over there at Blexit? Or do you agree? Like,
very, very interesting. Don't you think? That's so weird. That's so weird. Don't you guys think that's weird? I find this so weird. What's all this money? What's all this going on with? What's all this donor money? Where's it all going, Candace? What's these weird LLC things you got going on that you're paying out of Brexit? Why is your husband the treasurer? Okay, so did a group sue Candace over Blexit? Short answer, no. There wasn't a successful lawsuit against Candace Owens specifically over Blexit, but there was a threat of legal action and a dispute tied to the name. So the original founder pushed back. The term Blexit was not originally hers. It was created in 2016 by Malia Connolly. It referred to Black economic independence, not politics. When Candace Owens launched her version in 2018, the original founder publicly objected. She reportedly threatened legal action over the use of the name, but there's no record of a major lawsuit actually moving forward or succeeding. The reason is the term Blexit wasn't trademarked at the time. That made it difficult to claim exclusive ownership, successfully sue over its use. So I have a video where somebody goes over that. And this video is pretty old. So this video is 7 years old, by the way, and it is named Candace Owens Stole Blexit Name and Attacks Brandon Straka on Twitter. And so we're going to get farther into the attacks on people. And so Brandon Straka was one of them that she attacked for no reason.
So we have even more proof now that Candace Owens is a liar. It turns out that in 2016, there was another group that already came up with the term Blexit, and it was like, a black empowerment type group or whatever. And now they're suing her because, she's trying to trademark the name and whatnot. And not only that, a few months after that group came out, somebody who worked for tpusa, the, what was it called? Turning Point USA, Jack Hoffman, registered the name Blexit.com a year before Candace Owens ever started working there, and like months before the whole thing about her seeing Nigel Farage and her coming up with the term. So that right there is a complete lie. So you cannot trust this girl's word whatsoever, right? Like she was lying about saying that Kanye West created her t-shirts when there's like video evidence of it all over the place. This girl, she just lies and lies and lies and hopes that
Yes, so that was one of the Blexit controversies, was that she claimed that Kanye West designed their shirts, their logos and stuff like that. And apparently that was false, because he came out and said, no, I didn't. And it was really awkward and weird. And then she had to end up apologizing to him.
enough people just don't notice or ignore it or just don't care, right? And she just moves on. She plows ahead. This is exactly what she's done in the past. She just, oh, that never happened. You're all white supremacists. And then she just moves ahead, and then she gets promoted by Prison Planet. And then finally now she's working for Fox News, right? But, she's such a liar. I thought she was just unoriginal, but no, she is a thief, as we see. And not only that, she is trying to start a conflict with Brandon Straka, the guy who came up with the walkaway movement. And it's like, the gall on you to do that. Like, first of all, you stole your whole video format type thing of people going and talking about or leaving the Democratic Party, yada, 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 from him, right? And he didn't even call you out for it, right? But I think all this really originated from a couple days ago when he tweeted out, he's like, by the way, I got some t-shirts. He's like, so this is an awkward time for me to announce that I'm going to be releasing a new line of walkaway shirts this week. And I made them myself, winky face, hashtag walkaway. So, this most likely triggered her, 'cause she's like, oh, you're making fun of me for lying? It's like, yeah, you're liar. People should be able to poke fun at you for that. Like, they get mad at him for saying that, and that may not have sent her over the edge. What probably really did was his tweet about, I think it was Tommy Lauren. He retweeted her, and then after that, then she started releasing tweets. She's like, we have heard this from a ton of people that he has been operating to stop Blexit. Many people now walking away from Walkaway, which is sad, being contacted by a lot of people who are disappointed by the nastiness. So this is Candace Owens. She's replying to this Montagna guy who is pretty much illiterate. I can't understand any of what he's saying in his post. Go on her Twitter feed and look through her tweets and replies. I'm sure you'll eventually find this guy, but he's just a retard. But I guess him and a bunch of other fans are saying that he's going behind her back and trying to say nasty things about the Blexit campaign and all this crap, which is complete lies. Like, everybody, if you read the comment section after she made these comments on Twitter, literally nobody supporting her. Nobody. I didn't find one tweet pretty much in support of her. They're all like, this is, I went to this event, the walkaway event, all 4 days. Nobody said anything about splitting up your event that was going on. Nobody said it. Brandon Straka, I'm pretty sure, even reached out to Candace Owens and asked her if she wanted to come and participate and share, and we could be unified and all this crap. So what is she talking about? Like, is she being swindled by some of her followers or not? I don't think so. I think she's doing this on purpose because she's mad that he retweeted Tommy Lauren and likes Tommy Lauren and said that thing about her t-shirt. So this shows you how petty Candace Owens is, how unoriginal, how much of a liar she is, and how willing she is to divide people over absolutely nothing, right? Like, for her to openly air this on Twitter instead of going in private to Brandon Straka and the Walkaway group and stuff is not very professional. It's not very good for your movement whatsoever. It's going to create infighting. Is that what you're trying to do? Because that's what's going to happen, right? And this was her tweet. Yeah, I think I already read this. Like, we have heard this from a ton of people. There's been operating to stop Blexit. Yeah, but and then there's a bunch of her followers just harassing Brandon Straka after this, and for days now, being like, oh, how dare you go against our queen Candace? How dare you go against her? She's our goddess, whatever. But it's like she just.
This was 7 years ago. literally 7 years ago. Queen, this is our Queen Candace. Oh my gosh, you guys.
Gaining a following, and she's eventually going to use that popularity to attack the people that she doesn't like. And a lot of those people are going to be on the right, because that's the only real effect that she can have. She can sick her mob against leftists. That's not going to do anything. But sicking her angry mob against other right-wingers, that's going to do something. That's going to create more division within people. And she's doing this right before midterms. So, is this girl, or is she doing this on purpose? And, it's hard to tell. I think she is both, right? Because, let's not forget, this girl was a massive SJW, 2 years ago. And the reasoning behind her becoming a right-winger is pretty something to do with, Zoe Quinn and her going to expose the trolls that are going to, make her look bad. Just some stupid story. Didn't really make a lot of sense. And now all of a sudden, her ideology is completely changed overnight, and she's making all these red pill black videos saying black people, you're fucking lazy, get off your ass, you black people. It's ridiculous, it's stupid, she's a joke, she's cringy. She's holding these events with all black people, and they're all come together and yeah, we in the house, it's the cringiest I've ever seen in my life. And all those kids, I'm pretty sure, were bused there, right? They were kids in youth and homes and stuff like that. They're doing the same type of shit that Democrats do. So it's don't put your faith in this girl. I know she's saying things that you like to hear, but you can't reward people just because of the color of skin. You're going to create entitled little like this girl, and they're going to have way too much power and authority behind them. And these are the exact people you do not want in government. She is the exact reason why I am against a large government, a big state, because you see how people get when they get a little bit of power, when they get some influence. They go and they abuse it. They use it. They create lies to suit their own agenda, to make themselves look better. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about honesty. They just care about winning. That's it. They care about keeping their power, keeping their fame, and their popularity, right? It's this is going to exist in a free society anyways as well, right? But it's going to be way more prevalent when you have, the politics constantly being played, these positions of power that people are trying to get to. There's going to be a lot more of it in the type of society that we have now. And, politics are just divisive by themselves. And if we can reduce the amount of need for politics as much as possible, that is going to be good for humanity, right? We don't want to have to talk about politics as much, right? The only reason we are forced to is because we live in a democracy where all of our money is being forcefully taken from us and given to the government, and then they go and decide how to redistribute it by us voting in certain governments that we prefer over another government that all these other people want, right? So there's always going to be this game of politics. There's always going to be this division, and there's always going to be people like Candace Owens trying to reach the top levels of these associations and whatever to gain power, to gain money, and they're all sociopaths. Like Candace Owens, she is most likely a sociopath. And if you look at the highest positions of government, of the business, and all this, they are filled with psychopaths and sociopaths, right? They are filled with these people because people like that are attracted to power. They want to control other people. See, the regular person like you or me and that, we don't necessarily want power. Like a lot of us don't want to control other people. A lot of us don't want to tell other people what to do. We don't feel comfortable doing that. A lot of people that I know, me personally, I don't feel comfortable ruling over other people, saying this is how you should live. This is how you should vote. This is how we should do things. But a lot of other people do like that. And I think the majority of people don't, but there are a minority of people that do. And within our system, the way it is run, the democracy in which it is, you're always going to get those people vying for those positions, because the rest of us just want to work. We just want to go about our days, have kids, have a happy life, and not control other people. But there are other people who don't want those things. There are other people who want power, who want control. And because of the system, the way it is now, we're always going to have that. We're always going to have people like Candace coming in. And I'm not saying she's a evil dictator or anything like that, but this is just a touch of what it looks like when somebody gets power hungry, or when they start to abuse the amount of influence that they do have. She is not doing it well. She should have brought this stuff in public, and I think she's smart enough to know what she is doing, right? She is smart enough, but she's gotten enough power that now she feels that she can go and she can I'm going to call out Tommy Lauren, I'm going to call out Brandon Struck, I'm going to call out all these other people for throwing me shade or making little simple jokes directed towards me, right? It's this girl is immature. You don't want these immature, power hungry sociopaths in any type of position. So you guys are all going to regret pushing this girl up to where she is now. You know, you're creating a monster, and eventually this monster is going to get out of control, and she's going to turn back on you guys. And all of this.
I feel like this is extremely prophetic. Like, this guy is a prophet. I'm just kidding, but like, oh my gosh, like everything he's saying is so true.
Identity politics that she's playing is not helping you guys gain any more black support. If there is any more black support gain, it is because of the economy and, you know, low unemployment for pretty much everybody. It has probably zero to do with Candace Owens, right? And if anything, you know, it was more to do with Kanye West. And she just, you know, look what she did to him as well. She also alienated him. She just tried to suck every little bit that she can get from him. And what did that do? You know, that made him be like, okay, I'm done with politics. You know, you see how divisive politics are. You know, Kanye, oh, this is great, but then he's got somebody probably like Candace in his ear, like, oh, you do this, and then who he probably thinks was his friend, right? Because she's probably going to say all the things like, you know, oh, I'm here for you, Kanye. I'll never turn against you. All that crap, blah blah. Then the next day she's like, oh, Kanye made all these for me, and tried to attach his name to her product because trying to sell more of it. And it's like, you know how like irresponsible that is? Like, he has his own brand. For you to come out and say that Kanye West endorsed or created your, that's up, because, you know, that could influence his brand tremendously because he didn't come up with that concept. Now you're saying he did. So it's like, you know, that could cost him lots of money, lots of endorsements, but she doesn't give a she just wanted to sell some, she just wanted some money. So, you know, keep being stupid, guys. Keep following this fraud who stole this movement from some other group in 2016, who, you know, this other guy, like I said before, Jack Hoffman, already registered this domain name Brexit.com months before she ever conceived of it herself. All lies, you know, and now she's going after Brandon Straka, one of the sweetest dudes on the internet, just like peace, love, and unity, you know, all the time, right? Like, guys, wake up. This girl is not on your side.
Okay, wow, that was crazy, right? Pretty wild, huh? Lots of weird stuff going on with Blexit that we're going to get into as well a little bit farther. But I think for right now, we will go ahead and get to the House and Habit article. 3. Candace Owens Undone Clean Shot by Jessica Reed Krause with House and Habit. The link for this will, of course, be in the description. Weekdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, Candace Owens sits at a desk in her Nashville home studio and spends about an hour talking into a camera. Her show, Candace, is an easy collision of contradictory ideas, energies, images, angles, and deliveries borrowed from male-dominated right-wing radio, modern bro podcasts, and female-ruled daytime talk of the 90s and early 2000s. Candace premiered in 2021 on The Daily Wire, where Candace's star rose until 2024 when she was fired over accusations of anti-Semitism. Her side dismissed this as cover for the petty truth. Her popularity had threatened Shapiro. When Candace returned, she was anonymous diva on her own. This time, it's just Candace, she told viewers. What sounded like a catchphrase from last century TV would prove to be a promise. In casting and content, Candace is just Candace most of the time. Stars by Kanye West scores the intro photo montage of the host as a child, bride, expectant mother, ending on her beautifully lit, millennially filtered, and even a critic has to admit, lethal face card. It's her face with her name and logo scrawled near in purple loopy script that reveals the split light conflict of her character. With two doe eyes shining at the camera, she still expresses stone-cold self-assuredness. Candace sits at the desk, the center of the Candace universe, haloed by professional light, and so charismatic, it's almost possible to ignore the ugly foam-covered microphone, laptop prop, and eyesore plastic water bottle, and you can definitely ignore the screen around her, where the framed photos, books, and cross dissolve into soft focus fuzz. Most important of all, there's the talking. The talking from the host with little interruption from outside voices. There are rarely any guests. Candace is streamed live online and downloaded on podcasting apps by an estimated 3.5 million listeners per episode. In 2025, Spotify listed her at number 16 on its chart, below solo host-driven industry leaders like Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, and Alex Cooper, and beneath mainstream giants like The Daily from The New York Times and Up First from NPR. The total reach of Candace is hard to judge, since Candace lives on through clips that circulate across social media platforms where she maintains 20 million followers. In daytime talk terms, Candace is verifiably much more popular than Ricki Lake, much less popular than the Oprah Winfrey Show, and less popular than Jerry Springer, and about as popular as Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, or Murray. And she doesn't even have to leave her home. It's important to understand how big Candace is to understand how big the terror she inflicts can feel. If social media is a democracy, Candace is a dictatorship. Under her rule, her claims go unchecked. On the basis of often iffy facts, she spreads a contagion of rage to her audience, and from there she's assisted by the smaller personalities with big ambitions who seek to grow their own brands by following her lead. And so we see that, right? We see that going on today. We call them her downstreamers. They build their careers off of her. Like, they build their content off what she's saying. On March 27th, 2025, I was at the home of a friend in Washington, talking to the usual assortment of family, sources, government official, and pop culture oddities who populate my life and my coverage here. The events of the previous night at the White House and online were on my mind, but I was trying to focus on what was next. Candace Owens was looking back. By 3 p.m. Eastern, she was forcing me to look back too. At her desk, she spun her version of events and her case against the object of her scorn into the camera. She began her rant by framing herself as an early Maha supporter, an anti-vaxxer, an admirer of RFK Jr. before it was cool. Okay, so this is really important to pay attention to, because this woman here shows very, very well how she spins the narrative to people, the way she talks about things to set them up so that you already have a framing in your mind before she tells you the information that she wants to tell you. It's a super manipulative cult-like tactic. This was a crucial strategic move. Before she could ask her audience to hate another woman in independent media, one publicly identified as a leading early Maha supporter and friend of RFK Jr., she needed to establish her own credibility and insulate herself from backlash. I could only be cast as a traitor if she first made a convincing case that she was the one truly on their side. In her telling, I had launched an unhinged attack, explainable only by alcohol. She framed me as unstable, suggesting that I log offline and focus on my family, and repeatedly she called me disgusting and a drunk. Worse, she claimed my supposed one-sided feud had been waged for corrupt reasons. I was not expressing my opinion, she argued, but shilling for neoconservatives and the feminist establishment. As proof, she cited my friendship with Meghan McCain and Weinstein accuser Jessica Mann, hyping these associations as revelatory rather than facts long on public record. In doing so, she misrepresented them, me, and herself. You worship Satan.
Do it when I'm pregnant. Imagine texting about that. You're a grown woman with 4 children. We need a clean shot on this 8-month pregnant woman who's waddling around because we can't find anything. Yeah, if you found anything on me, you want to know what it was? You'd find out that I didn't know the full Latin liturgy because my life is spent between church, my life is spent between mass and my children. That's driving you crazy because you all suck. You're all disgusting. You all have no morals. That's why you're in DC posting about your shoes on a red carpet and thinking that it means something to anybody who has a shred of morality, because that is who you guys are. That's what you believe in. That is what you worship. You worship celebrity. You worship red carpets. You worship paparazzi shots. Your life has no substance. You guys are literally, you worship Satan. It's all meaningless. It means nothing. You're all dishonorable. case. I looked into the case. And another thing that she hasn't been telling people is that she's influencing people not to look into our Harvey series, which is explosive, because she has a personal relationship with one of the quote unquote victims who just had that decision overturned by the appellate courts, Jessica Mann. So she's been pretending to be a casual passerby. Oh, there's nothing that could get me interested in this case. When in reality, she is the most interested person in this case because she covered this when she was a left-leaning, liberal, high on feminism person. And she defended the victims. Not only did she defend the victims, quote unquote victims, but she also lived with one of them, Jessica Mann. So our last episode was entitled Jessica Mann and the 3-Year Affair. And people were asking Candace, why did you pause this series when you started looking into Jessica Mann? Well, the truth is it's because House and Habit came to us and I thought we were friendly and cool. And she said, Jessica Mann would like to connect with you. You know, she wants to speak to you. She also off record told my PR person that she doesn't believe that she was raped either. So I thought this was like an explosive revelation. I thought she maybe wanted to come on the show. I wanted to provide her an opportunity to assert what her side of it was, because I'm relying off of court transcripts and I'm reading things and I'm reading her emails. But if she had something else to add, I wanted to be a fair journalist. Like, I'm not here to make Harvey Weinstein look.
On allegation of corruption number 1, Candace had lobbied an unprovoked and cruel attack on Meghan, and she was unhappy when I pointed that out. On her program, she said her bullying was somehow justified by her position on vaccines. Speaking in the third person, she said, so when you have the full context of this back and forth and you realize, no, actually, Candace was standing up for anti-vaxxers at the time when we were being bludgeoned over the head by mainstream media, bludgeoned over the head by neocons, bludgeoned over the head by people who were trying to essentially force us to get a vaccine that we weren't comfortable with. And when you see the way House and Habit just presents it, like I just randomly attacked a woman and called her fat, it's dishonest. She's engaging in dishonesty, and it's not the only time that she has done this. In truth, what Candace said about Meghan was the same out of context as it was within context. Mean, rude, tactless, regardless. On allegation of corruption number 2, Candace was taking Weinstein's side in her coverage of the years-old trial, and I thought it would be helpful for her to hear from a credible accuser. I had once offered to connect her with Jessica Mann, but Jessica Mann backed off after concluding that Candace was not credible. In her effort to repurpose Jessica Mann as part of the smear campaign against me, Candace disclosed something I had shared privately with her PR representative, Mitchell Jackson. It wasn't an opinion I would have broadcast. Hearing it spoken aloud stripped all nuance and humanity, simplified it into data to support the argument that I lacked integrity was shocking. In truth, Candace was the one taking things out of context. 2 weeks earlier, Mike and I had dinner with Mitchell Jackson in Laguna Beach. We were joined by Olivia Nuzzi per Mitchell's request. They had met when they were both young reporters before Mitchell became a PR maven and had been close friends for a decade, a detail Candace Owens would later conveniently leave out of her attacks. The 4 of us squeezed into a velvet booth shaped like a clamshell. We ordered steak to share. Mike ordered tequila. I ordered a glass of Pinot Noir. And Mitchell and Olivia, who don't drink, got right into it. Mitchell and Olivia hadn't seen each other since the scandal that drove Olivia from New York to the West Coast. Mitchell rolled his eyes as he recounted how she had freaked out in the days after news about her and RFK Jr. broke, and refused to meet him in an Upper East Side restaurant because a New York Post reporter was hosting a party there at the same time. "We are on the patio. The party was inside," he said. "Are you insane?" she asked. "You hung up on me," he said. He shouted at her about how stupid she was not to take his public relations and career advice throughout the crisis. She scoffed. "Yes, please tell everyone about your bright ideas," she said. "Ideas to save your life," he said. Among Mitchell's ideas was that Olivia should have checked into rehab to make it illegal for New York Magazine to fire her, capitalized on the tabloid frenzy by courting the media attention she was hiding from, and monetized the scandal by publishing sex from RFK on OnlyFans. We have very different sensibilities, Olivia said, shaking her head and covering her face with her hand. Yeah, Mitchell said, mine are popular. He accused Olivia of still being in love with RFK. That was the only explanation for her refusal to attack him, Mitchell said. He went on about how stupid she was and how stupid she would be if she didn't publish what remained of RFJK's sex in the future. You have to be shameless, Olivia, he said. You're protecting him. Stop protecting people. It was tense, but it wasn't a fight. This was their relationship, it seemed. Mitchell was loud, Olivia was quiet. Mitchell saw a crisis as a business opportunity. Olivia saw a crisis as a spiritual event. Mitchell thought that was insane. Olivia thought Mitchell was insane. They were like siblings, each from different planets. It's fine. I love Mitchell, Olivia said. I'm being hard on you out of love, he said. I know, she said. Is it like strange that I didn't even know that this scandal happened? Eventually, I changed the subject. We talked about Candace and my issues with some of her recent content, including her defense of two men she counted as friends, Kyan West and Andrew Tate. Under any other name would be subject to her condemnation. Yet, she consistently ignored and excused their endorsement of corn as an acceptable form of public consumption. Kanye briefly had his X account labeled NSFW after sharing explicit corn midday during a chaotic posting spree in early 2025, which ultimately ended in his account being taken down. Oh yeah, and then there's him parading his wife around like this everywhere, and she doesn't look happy at all doing that. Mitchell defended her. We debated a bit. Then he talked about the business. He said that Candace's husband, George, was very involved behind the scenes, which reminded me of an article I had sitting as a rough draft in my possession. A freelance writer on my team wanted to publish a critical story about Candace. I said, the writer had a draft she had been working on, and a second writer I'd contracted with before encouraging her. The two of them shared a passion for the topic that verged on obsession, and they pitched the story as a joint effort. Together they uncovered explosive facts, they told me, related to Candace's background, rumors about her husband and his family's foreign political ties and immense wealth. It sounded promising, but I knew enough by now to be wary. Why don't we talk about Candace Owens' husband now, shall we? George Farmer, full name George Thomas Stayhill Farmer, often styled the honorary George Farmer, is a British-American businessman, entrepreneur, and conservative political figure. Born into a wealthy and politically connected British family, he has maintained a relatively low public profile to his wife, American commentator Candace Owens, while holding leadership roles in right-wing organizations and media ventures. He holds dual UK-US citizenship granted in 2025, and is a devout Catholic converted from an evangelical background. Public information about him comes primarily from Wikipedia news reports, interviews, including joint appearances with Owens, and company files. No major personal scandals or criminal issues are documented, though his roles have drawn criticism tied to conservative politics and platform moderation debates. Okay, so a lot of people like to say, like, oh, he's not, like, the family was given the titles later in life, they weren't like born with it or whatever. But no, these are very connected, very wealthy people in England. Okay. Key background facts. Family. Son of Michael Farmer, Baron Farmer, a prominent metals trader nicknamed Mr. Copper, founder of Metal and Commodity Company Ltd, former Conservative Party treasurer, and life peer in the House of Lords since 2014. And Jennifer Ginny Potts. He has siblings. Family details are private beyond this. The family is affluent from commodities, trading, and finance. He attended the elite St. Paul's School in London, earned a first-class Bachelor of Theology degree from the University of Oxford, St. Peter's College, with studies including politics, philosophy, and economics. He was a member of the notorious Bullingdon Club, an exclusive rowdy elite society. Early career, he worked as a research analyst at London market research firm Jigsaw Research, founded Redfield and Wilton Strategies, a polling strategy company, and the Red Kite Group investment hedge fund work focused on mining equities and mine finance, often in partnership with his father. He's strongly pro-Brexit and conservative, supported the Brexit referendum in 2016 and ran unsuccessfully as a Brexit Party Now Reform UK candidate in the 2019 European Parliament election for the South East England constituency. Faith and personal style. Devout Catholic, has spoken publicly about centering life on Christ, preferring a smaller, more dogmatic church. Described as steady, supportive, and low-key in interviews with Owens, contrasting her high-profile style. Net worth not publicly disclosed in detail, but he comes from significant family wealth and has been involved in successful ventures. Parlor, under his CEO tenure, raised tens of millions of dollars in funding. The couple lives in Nashville, Tennessee. Board member of GB News, UK right-leaning news channel since 2023. Okay, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. GB News. And the reason why that's really interesting is because I have been connecting the dots of all these media personalities, influencers and stuff, and news channels and how they're connected to each other and the Catholic Church, well, factions of it anyway. It's very, very interesting. So I will have to look into that more. Okay, so key timeline events. Completes education at St. Paul and Oxford, enters investment banking, hedge funds, becomes involved in British conservative politics and the Brexit movement. That's pre-2018. December 2018, meets Candace Owens in London at the soft launch reception for Turning Point UK, a right-wing student advocacy group modeled on Turning Point USA. Owens, then tpusa communications director, was in London coordinating events. Specifics from their joint interviews podcast, first meeting around December 11th at the Royal Automobile Club, dinner next night. They connected immediately amid shared conservative Blexit interests. A week later, December 18th, a notable car journey conversation deepened things. Owens flew to the United States and they spent time together shortly after. December 29th, 2018, 18 days after the first meeting, Farmer proposes to Owens via FaceTime. Whirlwind romance, they have joked about publicly, even though it didn't really sound like a whirlwind romance. It sounded very unromantic the way he describes it anyway. February 2019, becomes chairman of Turning Point UK, the British offshoot of Charlie Kirk's tpusa. He helped launch it in 2018 alongside figures like Oliver Anisfield. TPUK aimed to promote free speech, free markets, and conservative values on UK campuses. His tenure is short. April 2019, steps down as chairman of Turning Point UK. After 2 months, exact reasons not detailed publicly, but he remains supportive of the broader movement. In June 2019, he runs unsuccessfully as Brexit Party candidate in European Parliament election. August 31st, 2019, marries Candace Owens at Trump Winery in Charlottesville, Virginia. High-profile conservative guests include Charlie Kirk, Nigel Farage, Jon Voight, and Larry Elder. January 2021, the couple's first child is born. May 17th, 2021, appointed CEO of Parler, the free speech social media app launched in 2018 as an alternative to Twitter, Facebook, its parent company. He did not found or personally acquire Parler. He was brought in as an executive leadership after the app's deplatforming from app stores post January 6th, 2021 Capitol riot, which occurred before his tenure but led to ongoing moderation controversies during it. Okay. 2021 to 2022 leads Parler through recovery efforts. The platform raises $56 million in funding by late 2022. Farmer publicly defends it as an uncancelable space. October 17th, 2022 announces and celebrates as Yay Day that Kanye West has agreed in principle to acquire Parler. Farmer frames it as groundbreaking for free speech and an uncancelable ecosystem. Yay Parler deal is mutually terminated in December 2022. Okay, so I want to show you guys. So during this time, when he was at Parler, he had this business deal with the Freedom Phone. Now, it's primarily connected through Candace and her role of promoting it, even though she wasn't the only conservative influencer promoting it. But he was behind the scenes pushing it with this dude that created it. And he was pushing for Parler to be on this Freedom Phone, the app, because it had got removed from the other app store. And generally you get like a fee for that, getting your app put on the phone. But we don't have any record or anything showing that. It would have benefited them greatly to have this, not only because she made money off each phone that was sold, but also because the Parler going on there and being able to be accessed would have been beneficial, but I don't really know. But let's look at the Freedom Phone, because it was a giant scam that they promoted.
You think you've seen a scam before, but wait until you see this one. So just last week, a 22-year-old Bitcoin millionaire called Eric Finman announced to the world the Freedom Phone, a fully private smartphone, completely free of censorship and snooping by the big tech companies like Facebook and Twitter, and at the same time, one that is supposedly comparable to the best smartphones on the market. This thing flew. It almost immediately hit the trending page, and in terms of likes, shares, conversation, people were passionately excited about it, including some pretty well-known influencers who've basically been telling people to drop what they're doing and to buy this right now. So I did. Quite literally. Then paid $500 for a Freedom Phone. And thanks to Dashlane sponsoring this video. So, this has got to be some next level smartphone, right? After all, the last Freedom Phone we saw was... Oh, right. Yeah. Anyways, just to give you a bit of context, Eric's reason for creating this phone was apparently inspired by the Jan 6th riots in the US. You might remember it. Donald Trump lost the election, and so a lot of his supporters stormed the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. to try and overturn that result. Now, what made this whole thing even more controversial was that a lot of this rioting had been coordinated on a free speech app called Parler. And so after all this happened, Google and Apple removed this app from their stores to discourage more people from joining in. This was the pivot point. Eric's whole message is that this was an unacceptable form of censorship, and that people should be able to say the things they want to say and use the apps they want to use. So he's created a phone that allows them to do that. Okay, I mean, I can also see the other side of that coin, but yeah, just putting the political premise aside, freedom itself is a fairly easy philosophy to get behind. So let's see what we're working with here. If you were an uninitiated consumer who didn't really know much about phones but saw the inspirational Twitter video and decided you want to buy, are you actually getting more freedom? Well, sort of. Maybe. The entire pitch here rests on this supposed new operating system that he's built, aptly named Freedom OS. It's basically Android, but with a lot of the snooping apps like Google Chrome taken out and replaced with non-snooping alternatives like DuckDuckGo. Bit misleading that he's pitching it like it's some revolutionary software he's built from scratch, but we'll let that slide. And just to give the guy a little bit of credit, he's not wrong in that there are certain apps that Google has censored, that this phone's app store called Patriarch will allow you to download. And the kind of finishing message that he's leaving people with is that Freedom Phone does everything your current phone does, except censor and spy on you. But this is where things start to go wrong. I mean, just to begin with, we can't verify that statement because we've got no idea what it does. There's not a single spec on the website. You don't know what processor you're getting, what cameras, what battery, and instead under each category, there's just a buy it now button. Like, even if this is made for people who may not care about the specs, for $500, they should at least be able to know what they're paying for. All we have is this little quote that says, best phone in the world. But who said that? Is this guy quoting himself? Also, isn't it just a little ironic, given the whole anti-big tech stance, that this product was announced via a tweet, and then the buy page actively encourages you to sign up to and share using these big tech platforms? But okay, just putting all that aside for a second, the concept of Freedom OS is fine. It's just, from everything we can see so far, it looks almost identical to an already existing free piece of software called Lineage OS. That would be a best case scenario. See, this Finman guy's had a pretty interesting story. He basically made a deal with his parents that if he could turn $1,000 into $1 million via investments, they would let him skip college. And he did. He put all of that 1,000 he had into Bitcoin back when Bitcoin was worth nothing, and when that blew up, his 1,000 ballooned into well over 2 million. That's all well and good, congratulations to him, but the point is, it doesn't in any way qualify him to be responsible for all of your data. He might be a little more reputable than one or two CEOs I know. But seriously, if this guy actually has built his own operating system like he's claiming, then that is a whole other security risk in of itself. Let alone the fact that, can you really rely on Eric Finman to provide you with the regular security updates your phone needs to protect itself? And if you're not getting those updates, then having a completely unfiltered app store, where nothing is censored even if it's malware, could create more problems than it solves. This is probably the reason for articles like this, and this. A bit harsh, but the point stands that nothing this guy has done so far in his career demonstrates that he is in any way an authority on security. Let alone the fact that who knows what kind of support you're going to get here. There's no contact number for the company, and the only email address doesn't answer. Or at least has left me on red for 3 days straight. Besides, this whole idea of giving people the option to use apps that have been banned, it's not a selling point. If I wanted to download Parler on my Android phone, even though I can't find it on the Google Play Store, all I'd need to do is to rock up to the Parler website and get it from there, for free. And even this Patri App Store itself, we can see from these celebrity endorsement videos what the interface looks like. And that's enough to all but confirm that all this store is a rebadged version of an already existing free app. And if you are enjoying this video, then a sub to the channel would be invaluable. Didn't see that one coming, did you? Oh yeah, and let's talk about these celebrity endorsement videos actually, because as soon as this phone was announced, we saw a whole load of high-profile people drop videos that basically said, this is the best thing since sliced bread. We had Candace Owens, who's an American author, who said,
Freedom phone. Literally, I'm holding a phone that is not controlled by Apple and Google. I think this is like the most amazing thing ever.
Yes, Candace. So am I.
You need to get this phone.
I don't know, Candace. Need is a pretty strong word. I need food, I need water, I probably don't need an unknown spec $500 notched rip-off phone, and clearly neither do you. This girl spent a good minute talking about how easy it is to switch her SIM over and how it's the first thing she did from her iPhone, and yet her tweets after this video are still coming from an iPhone. Oh yeah, and how could I forget?
You can get 10% off by using just my first name, Candace. If you use the code Candace, if you use the code Candace at checkout.
There are plenty more of these endorsement videos, but probably the funniest one is from a girl called Anna Kate. It's literally 30 minutes of pure gold. I kind of wish I could show you the whole thing, but I'll settle for highlights. For starters, she has no idea what it is.
It's an Android? I don't think it's an Android. Is it an Android? I'm not really sure.
Well said.
There is no face recognition, which I love.
What's next? It doesn't make calls, which I love. Face recognition is a useful feature. If you don't like it, you can always turn it off.
So I like that it very much reminds me of an Apple phone.
It's an Android. Oh, yeah, and don't forget...
If you want to get it, use code KATE. You'll get 10% off.
It doesn't take long to figure out why these people are involved. Turns out the Freedom Phone company has set up an affiliate scheme that pays promoters $50 per sale. Which means that, let's say I made a video telling you to drop what you're doing right now and buy it, and let's say 20,000 of you actually went through and placed an order, that would be $1 million. But But this is the worst bit. So far, all we've gathered is that all the phone's main selling points aren't really selling points, but this is where it goes from bad product to scam. See, this is an America First phone, right? This thing's entire angle is that your data is yours, get away from spyware, etc. Even the logo is based on a US flag, except it's actually built by a small phone company in China. The one country that Donald Trump, who's almost like the supposed inspiration for this phone, accused of spying. The guy even went as far as to completely ban Chinese Huawei for this exact reason. Finman's justification was that, well, it's impossible to build a phone top to bottom in the US right now, citing the fact that Motorola struggled with this exact same thing. Hey, maybe that would be an issue if, you actually built this phone yourself. But it gets worse. In an interview with Daily Beast, he let loose that the company he was working with was in fact UmiDigi, known for their shockingly low cost and absolutely not their reputation for security. Oh, and would you look at that? UmiDigi already has a phone that looks exactly like yours. The A9 Pro. The notch is the same, the buttons are the same, the camera layout exactly the same. These are not two different phones. So what you actually mean when you say you worked with UmiDigi is that you went onto Alibaba and you ordered 1,000 phones for $100 each. I mean, by this logic, Tim Cook and I are best friends because I've been ordering his iPhones for the last 5 years. Just to give you some perspective here, while a company like Samsung might make 20% profit per phone, Xiaomi might make 10% or maybe even 5%, this guy is out here trying to make a 500% markup by only adding features that you can already get for free. Finman has tried to justify this $500 price tag by saying the phone features customized hardware and improved memory, but we know what that really means. He's gone onto the store, clicked this button, and then clicked this button. But what makes it even funnier is the fact that the UmiDigi A9 Pro is not even one of the company's current models. It's a phone from 2020, and the chipset inside of it, the MediaTek Helio P60, has been known to be vulnerable to authentication bypass attacks. This isn't the product of someone who actually cares about privacy, it's the product of someone who's trying to take advantage of people who aren't as tech savvy, and who just don't realize that A, the hardware inside is incredibly cheap, and B, that they can get all of these apps that are on here for free anyways. It's tricking people into thinking they're buying a US-centric device, when actually they might as well have just imported a phone from China and used all the extra money to feed their family for a month.
Okay, so that's crazy, right? George Farmer's connection to the Freedom Phone is primarily through his wife, Candace Owens, and his role as then CEO of Parler. While he was not the founder of the device, he was a key figure in the ecosystem that promoted it and integrated with it. The controversies involving Farmer and the Freedom Phone generally fall into three categories. The marketing and vetting controversy. In 2021, Candace Owens became the primary celebrity face of the Freedom Phone, heavily promoting it to her millions of followers as a way to escape big tech. Critics quickly discovered that the $500 device was a white-labeled, rebranded, I can't say that word, the thing he talked about, A9 Pro, a Chinese-made budget smartphone that retailed for roughly $120. Farmer's role as Owens' husband and a prominent conservative tech executive, Farmer was seen as part of the inner circle vetting the product. Critics questioned how a self-proclaimed tech leader could endorse a product that was essentially a markup, foreign-made device marketed as a freedom tool for American patriots. One of the major selling points of the Freedom Phone was that it came preloaded with uncensored apps. The connection at the time of the phone's launch was George Farmer was the CEO of Parler. Parler was one of the flagship apps pre-installed on the device. This created a perceived conflict of interest or circular economy where Farmer's company benefited from the sales of the device his wife was paid to promote. Furthermore, tech experts noted that the Patriot app store on the phone, which Farmer supported as a free speech alternative, was actually a rebranded version of the Aura store, an open source interface for the Google Play Store, meaning the phone wasn't actually independent of big tech infrastructure. The Freedom Phone was marketed as being untraceable and more secure than iPhones or Androids. The fallout. Cybersecurity experts warned that the phone actually posed a greater security risk to users because it used an outdated version of Android and lacked the standard security patches provided by Apple or Google. It was arguably more vulnerable to hacking. The criticism. Farmer, given his background in tech and finance, faced criticism for allowing his brand, Parler, and his family's reputation to be tied to a device that experts labeled as snake oil or a scam targeting a politically motivated audience. Okay, so that's interesting. Now I have another thing we can go over. Okay, so this is an interview with a man, I can't pronounce his name very well, Dom Luker, something like that. He's really big on X. He has a really big account there, which I will leave his X account in the description and also the link to this video. But he worked for Blexit, and I believe in this interview he talks about George Farmer. So let's see.
I will say a lot of the information that's negative against Erica is coming directly from Candace, and she's not being that genuine about why she's going against her.
So what do you think about Candace? I want your thoughts on her.
I used to work for her. I was state director of Blexit, Tennessee. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Oh wow. I was.
Didn't you come here with him?
Yeah.
I didn't know about that part.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. So that's 2021. After I did January 6th, I joined Blexit in April. I became her state director.
You're part of Blexit. Okay.
Yeah, I became state director of the year like 2 months after, bro. I was just
That's
really
crazy.
Good.
That's
I got awards. I still got a trophy at my house. Yeah, but I worked with her for like a year. She might. I don't want
Keep it a bean.
She's not what she's seen, bro. She's not. And the whole story with like Charlie Kirk, with Erica, she wants what Erica has for the most part. And there's a lot of history behind the scenes between her and Charlie. But I can say,
can you knock it down?
Candace,
yeah,
I'm unaware.
Okay,
but
allegedly,
I can say like, man, she
yeah.
No, I'm saying, well, Charlie, what? Candace knows what she's doing. It up, man. I'm sorry. It is what it is. I gotta call it out. So, like, here's a small example. At Turning Point USA, one of Candace's main things that she was saying is that a student was like somewhat mourning, and they asked them to recollect their thoughts. The news asked them, "Hey, what happened? How long have you been working for Charlie?" This was like what 10, 15 minutes after he got shot. Now you see a group of Turning Point USA people strong on him, say you can't talk to the media, no talking to the cameras. Candace Owens dedicated like 20 minutes of her show to this scenario. Completely disingenuous, because this was part of Turning Point USA, part of Blexit. They all have the same contractual obligations. It's a 501c3, not allowed to talk to media, no matter what happens.
Yeah,
not allowed to talk to politicians. You think the regular viewer gonna know that? No. So it's like that she's doing, that's intensified, that times 10. I know it. I'm people game. I'm like, come on, Candace. You know they legally can't talk. It's a 501c3. If it's 501c4, they could, but they'll do that to anyone. They're gonna strong. If they find out you talking to the media, Blexit, they're gonna pull you aside like they did with him. But she's making it seem like it's a conspiracy. And whenever she's wrong on something, she doesn't admit to the audience that she's wrong. She just doubled down on something yet again. So she's kind of like, to me, ruined her investigation because it's disingenuous. And every time that something is wrong, instead of her saying that she's wrong and correct it, she'll claim that, oh, I really got him mad today. I mean, it's absolutely insane, man. When I went to the Charlie Kirk funeral, when we got back, the first thing she did is said, I think they're talking about me. Like,
so what was that meeting about when she went to go see Erica Kirk, allegedly?
They met face to face. Okay. And for the most part, I think Erica Kirk was letting her know legally that what position Candace Owens was in. And I think she gracefully asked for her to try to let off on it. And Candace chose to do what she did when she got back. Not to say this isn't going to go without lawsuits. Candace is pretty tactical. She understands the moment that Turning Point USA attempts to sue her, it's going to look like Candace is the right one. They're the wrong ones trying to sedate out the truth. At the very top, that's what they're dealing with. They would love to serve her. They would love to, but they just know the optics right now, and Candace taking advantage of it.
And that is what Candace does with everybody. She did that with Kim Klacik, which we're going to get into eventually. She did that with the Macrons and other people. So anytime people like try, because it is illegal to defame people. Like, we have laws against that. We have free speech, but then we have laws where you can't just ruin people's reputation and spread malicious lies and slander about them, because many of our laws are based off the Bible, and that is against the law of the Bible. So it's very, it's talked about in the Bible that that's not okay. You're not allowed to do that, to completely lie, slander, and gossip, rumor people's reputation and how other people view them. So that's why we have laws. against it, but they're really hard to prove. And Candace Owens, she then makes the whole thing into a big spectacle and makes it a million times worse for you in the public eye when you do try to go and justifiably use the law that you have at your disposal to get her to stop slandering you. It's really actually very sick and disgusting, but that's what the tactic she uses. And it gives her more content for her show.
But she's taking advantage of an unaware crowd for clicks. Some stuff is like, okay, you cooking, but some stuff is like, you know, deep down that this is this way because of this. It's this way because of this. And they made her rich. She got rich because of Charlie. I'm gonna reveal it, bro. Look, Charlie Kirk owned Blexit.org 5 years before Candace had it. Really? He owned it. Yeah, she never owned it. It was Charlie.
Oh. That's crazy.
Because they can't have this white dude. All right, come on now.
Oh,
Let me get into it, bro.
Dog cooking now.
I know what really happened. I was at the very top, bro. Like, I got all the secrets. I know what happened to King Face. I know all I know all the truths. And she's pretty disingenuous with a lot of stuff. But of all celebrities I met in my life, Candace is the biggest. And really? I mean, even with Vivek Ramaswamy, she went on the bus with Vivek Ramaswamy. All the other people were asking to take pictures. Candace, she'll stay at the front of the door. She won't touch her audience. She won't take pictures with them. That's why you don't see Candace take pictures with the crowd. You're not obligated to. But she's extremely arrogant. I remember we had a volunteer come down to Blexit that worked from Alaska. Flew all the way down from Alaska. Did it all for free. She's a volunteer for our Chattanooga event. The foreman that got Candace Owens coffee asked her to possibly just see the woman for 12 seconds. And she said, if they are coming from Alaska to volunteer to see me, then they come in with the wrong intentions. Like, she wrong? No. That's some. Wow. These are the people that's doing it for free. These are the people that believe in you. And you're not even legitimate. Your shit's owned by a white man. Like, you didn't come up with that idea. Shit, your husband. Come on, man.
So those text messages that she leaked, are those true? Like the text messages between her and Charlie Kirk?
They're true. Yeah, they're true. But look at the years. Why that nigga want to talk on her 2 weeks before he died? 3 weeks. Me and Fresh, you can find if something happened right now, you gonna tell him. Yeah. That shit is not 5-6 months ago, bro.
Yeah, so that's years ago.
It's months. Most of it is months, but most of the text she's sharing is years ago. Gotcha. She went on rants. Tim Pool knows. Tim Pool ain't a liar. Tim Pool said that he's heard. She's told him personally that she hates Charlie. That she was trying to destroy Charlie.
Wait, Candace said that?
Yes, that's what Tim Pool. That's coming from Tim Pool's mouth. People that know on the inside, they got a lot of disdain for her because it's like, man, he's being disingenuous on the world stage, man. Because the people, they don't have this data, so they're going to view it as a word. Even like the Fort, whatever, the Fort. Yep. That didn't come out. Yeah, it didn't come out as green as possible, or even with the with the planes, the Egyptian planes, or some things that came out down, and she just moved to something else immediately. She immediately moved to something else. She claimed that her life was threatened. Well, they came out beautiful lies. She was at Dolly World, chilling out at Dolly World with fans. She claims that people were trying to kill her. Why are you at Tucker Carlson Christmas party? Like, it's a lie that's just not true, and I'm going to let people enjoy it or enjoy the show because it's content. She's doing her job. She's in the but bro, content. She has to answer to her own morality at the end of the day, and it's not going to be pretty.
She dropped a video and audio of Erica Kirk celebrating some sales after Charlie's death. You think that's right to do?
I think what she did, I think it's ugly. I think it's demonic to do that because at the end of the day, bro, if you look at the whole video, there's a lot of parts of Erica actually being upset. She's in a compromised situation. What is Erica to do? If she cries, she's a fake crier. If she smiles, she's happy dead. It's nothing that she can do because that narrative has been set against her. It's nothing she can do. She was literally processing her emotions throughout the video. You're going to laugh, you're going to smile, you're going to be proud. Maybe that's something Charlie dreamed of. Like, this is a person trying to process their emotions. It's a human being trying to act like they're more than that in front of the world, bro. Yeah. She's trying to make the right choice with the world watching and people taking advantage of it. Our party, and the problem I have with this is our party. Democrats, say what you want, attack her, do whatever you want to her. That's your position. That's what you're supposed to do on the world stage. But our party is so quick to attack this woman instead of trying to get clarity behind the scenes. Why is Candace doing this in front of a monetized audience? You're Candace Owens, the most important black conservative in America. Yeah. You can get any answer you want.
I mean, she is. I mean, well, for one, I did look into the threats before Charlie Kirk died. So there was a threat on her life from a guy who I believe was from New Jersey, in the New Jersey District Courts, a year to the date, September 10th, where this guy actually threatened her life. Do you know about that?
Yep. Someone said this guy going to defend. Look, people idols ain't what they seen. Why was Candace on that Israeli website? That modeling website, bro. Why? Yo. Everyone knows it's real. At the very top, they know it's real. Why was no, you want me to give you those answers? What about his husband? Her husband is attached to the whole Brexit thing. Okay. That random that they got them linked with Brexit. George wanted to buy Parler. Parler said, you ain't got no ties to the conservative movement. We're not letting you buy this. You could be a raging leftist and you're not from America. Nigga, American Candace Owens, he got that shit. And then guess what he tried to do? They tried to add Ye. Ye didn't like the deal. He somewhat started beating with George over it. These people aren't what they seem. I mean, even her husband, man. Like, I actually got proof that could ruin her life. Like, on some, I can show y'all about that.
So he got proof. He's from, okay, so he's from the UK, and I know he's from some prominent family. Right?
Yeah, the Duke of England. He's yep.
Got you.
But you know what's crazy about creators as well? Like, I look at this as well. On camera, they're the victim. They're like, oh yeah, I'm better than these people, or I have all the info. Then it's like, I know you, bro. I know you're capping. Like, why you capping to them? Just be honest.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah,
I couldn't imagine him being that close to them. Like, yo, listen, this is the real people here. Oh, we hate on them. No, I know them personally.
Yes, bro. It makes you look like it's like.
It makes you look like a hater.
You do.
And I'm like, bro, like, I know them more than you.
Right.
Like, why?
And the way that the chat started attacking me, that's so I want the chat to just use me as an example. Yeah. This is the don't speak. Oh, and Erica. Okay, if the narrative is set for you to be against Erica, it's brave for me to even sit here and try to give her some type of leisure. I must know something to be confident on it, but people, it's not the answer that they want, so I'm automatically the bad guy. Like X said famously, it's better to be light than be right. So if I came on here dissing Erica, they're cooking. Yeah. Bro, just because I'm not cooking what I want to eat don't mean I stop making a dish. Right. Like, bro, I don't get that shit.
Cooking. Hey, so this is why we have this platform, right? Yeah, because we talk but we back it up and we ask questions. So that's a great question because I was going in on Erica only because there's a lot of questions, and I connect the dots because of the Fort Chuka and all that stuff. Her mom owning that company, E3 Tech Group, EMPs. It's weird.
Her being a model. I mean, all this stuff. But I can speak about her being with Trump from the very beginning. Being a model, all that stuff is worth mentioning. But what that is the people unfortunately got to look inside how the elites get down. Very normal. It's got to be through knowing somebody. Right. That's just the elites.
Yeah,
people just so haven't got to get a peek inside. That's no conspiracy.
Yeah,
that's just how above compared to
we have a peephole of what's going on.
Yeah, they see a little different. So it's like, oh, y'all want to go see that. But it ain't got nothing to do with what you think it does. That's just how they move. That's just their reality. Now, I mean, at the end of the day, the stuff that she does, the way hugging holding the back of his head, that's what you hate. But guess what?
Okay, so he's explaining sort of like what I was talking about earlier about how these people are just different than the average normal people. There's different personality types, etc. If anybody's ever taken that test and stuff, and there's like type, A this, whatever, and then they're more of like this completely different type of person. That's just the way people are. It's not like something weird or bad. What he was talking about there, about he has stuff that on George Farmer and how there's stuff that could like mess with his careers. One of the things people are talking about is that Candace Owens is in a relationship with George just as a business relationship, and that he is actually, in fact, a gay man. So let's go look at some of that stuff. Somebody shared a TikTok. I will get this post and I will try to figure out the writing on the TikTok and leave that below as well for the creator that's being shared. This kind of puts it all into one condensed thing rather than going all over and finding the different tweets. So let's see. Let's check this out.
One of the biggest rumors on X amongst the conservatives is that Candace Owens and George Farmer have a sham marriage that was forged for political reasons. That George Farmer is actually gay, Candace Owens may be bi, and that their marriage was created for business and political endeavors. One of the biggest founding allegations that support these rumors comes from Raheem Kassam, a British political activist, former editor-in-chief of Breitbart News in London, and former chief advisor to the former UK Independence Party leader Nigel Farage. Raheem is outspoken about his allegations against George Farmer. He says,
okay, so he is close with Nigel Farage, which means he was close with Candace and her husband, right? Nigel Farage was at their wedding. He was part of the Blexit movement. He ran for political office, okay? And Nigel Farage is a weirdo, like a creep weirdo. And they're actually like very unsatisfied with him in the UK. And so, because he started the Reform Party, and then he just started adding like all these Tories to it that are like felled and have ruined everything, and other weird stuff that he's doing. And so they just started a whole nother party that's actually doing really well and will hopefully win the elections. But it's called the Restore Party. I made a video on that.
don't get me wrong, I think it's cringe, and so is that fraud Candace Owens, who blocked me for telling the truth about her sham marriage. I called her out on her hubby trying to grope me and kiss me multiple times. She blocked me for it. He is gay. I am straight, hence the complaint. Raheem mocks Candace Owens' quotes in an article and says, "Trad wife my ass, by the way. Still remember when she was slamming cocktails while her husband 5 feet away was trying to grab my crotch. Freak shows." I know more about this world than I care to. Mercer tried to get me to tell Bannon to shut up about populist nationalism. I was the guy who hired Milo at BNN. Farmer has essayed me. Candace blocked me for calling her sham marriage out. I know this from all angles. He responded to a comment saying, well, when your husband is a homosexual, that makes for a difficult marriage. But if you support that kind of thing, I'm happy to lose you. The Anani bots are mad because I don't care for George Farmer's beard wife and her falling out with her neocon paymakers, and am instead focused on how Trump can win in November. Candace Owens is a grifting bisexual who is gay boy George Farmer's beard actually mutual. I don't know anything about her content on Israel or whatever this nutter is talking about. Can't say I've ever seen her show, and I've loathed her. These aren't the allegations coming from an anonymous person on the internet. This is coming from a well-respected British political commentator in the conservative movement based in London, which is exactly where George Farmer comes from. Here is George Farmer pictured with Nero, who is considered a far-right groiper. But the groipers are known for something else, being closeted, anti-Semitic.
Okay, so I just want to say that Nero, which is Milo, is not a groiper. He actually hates the groipers, and the groipers don't like him either. They have huge feuds together. He calls Nick Fuentes gay all the time and like other horrible stuff about him. He's not a groiper. I find it really odd that nobody seems to know anybody's like actual political like leanings. Like all the time I'm hearing things about this group or that group that's not true and attributing like all kinds of stuff to them that they don't actually believe. It's sort of weird to me. Like, people on the right need to get better informed about the other people on the right with them, because nobody is making any sense. I watch all the stuff, so I'll hear people say something and I'm like, that's not what they think at all. So it's just weird.
Anti-woman, which are views Candace Owens has picked up since marrying George. It's been said many times from many people that Candace and George's marriage was for political business reasons. Interestingly enough, they had a MAGA wedding despite the fact that Candace Owens no longer supports Donald Trump.
Okay, so with the Yay Parler deal, the announcement October 22nd under George Farmer's leadership, Parler announced that Yay had agreed to an acquisition in principle. Farmer framed it as a move to create an uncancelable ecosystem. The timing, the deal was announced just as Ye was facing massive backlash for anti-Semitic comments. Critics accused Farmer and Parler of exploiting Ye's mental health state and controversial status to save a struggling platform. Shortly after Ye's infamous appearance on InfoWars, so that's when he was wearing that mask. You guys remember that? Like, that was crazy. Parler announced the deal was terminated. It later revealed the platform was in significant financial trouble, leading to questions about whether the deal was ever viable or just a PR stunt. Or were Candace and George trying to take advantage of Ye, who said he was not doing well during that period of time?
George Farmer did end up buying Parler shortly after marrying Candace Owens in a MAGA-themed wedding. And rumors are circulating that George...
He never bought Farmer. He was Parler. He was just the CEO. I mean, as far as like what I'm seeing, he was just the CEO.
Farmer wanted to be the new CEO of tpusa after Charlie's passing. George Farmer was the chairman of TPUK.
Terrified she's in this position, and I think the mistake they made, and I've said on my podcast, she should never become the CEO and chairman overnight. Because now, when people have questions, you got to answer them, right? You're not just a grieving widow, but you very quickly decided that you were equipped to be Charlie. Well, guess what? That's going to be a trial by fire. Charlie had to go through it. It's painful, and so people are feeling like...
I don't think that anybody would have come up with the questions that she has had to deal with if it wasn't for you. If it was not for Candace Owens, nobody would be saying all this crazy stuff, because there's literally no proof. So nobody would just be finding this stuff, because she's insinuating and making it seem like there's proof by drawing insinuations from like this irrelevant point to like this irrelevant point and then making it seem relevant. Nobody else would be doing that if she hadn't started doing that. You know what I mean? But they still would be shaming her, because that's a thing society does to widows. It's actually a psychological thing where widows are often shamed, and that's something we're going to go over in a future program. But it's not uncommon for widows to be treated very, very negatively by society. When their husbands pass and they become a widow, they are criticized very, very sharply, very bad. They can do nothing right. It's really just it's why the Bible mentions it, that we have to be nice to widows, because people just generally aren't. They're actually really, really harsh to widows in like all cultures. So
hey, it's not fair to ask her any questions because her husband just died. They should have put in place an interim CEO. Like, that's what any company would do. You would just say a couple of months, give everybody time to grieve and kind of address the fact that this is like a new company and like we've got to figure things out without the head of the company, So I think they made a managerial error.
People are speculating that Candace Owens very well may be trying to intimidate Erica Kirk out of the CEO position at TPUSA. It's been suggested that George Farmer wanted that position and felt entitled to it. He had dreams to globalize TPUSA that Charlie Kirk did not share. Not long after Candace Owens married George Farmer did she leave TPUSA, and her and Charlie's relationship had completely soured, as she told many people that she hated Charlie, and Charlie would roll his eyes if someone even mentioned her name. Dave Rubin came story with his personal account about how Candace really felt about Charlie. He said, I haven't said it publicly before, but it's finally worth mentioning. The last time I saw Candace at my house in 2022, all she talked about for an hour was how much she hated Charlie. I remember vividly because the other two people she was ranting against that night were Ivanka and Jared, whom we had just met and had dinner with a few days before, and who couldn't have been kinder, more decent people. Yes, that is 100% true, and when she claims this didn't happen, or it's a Zionist lie, ask her if she enjoyed the chicken parm. Arranging marriages for political power and gain is definitely a strategy that works. Two people who have the same goal and ambitions and desires, with two different sets of traits, skills, talents, and characteristics, can form a solid brand, take on the world, and cover for one another, as well as use each other to achieve their own ends. Candace Owens and George Farmer have not been able to collaborate effectively on what to tell the public about their relationship and how they met. Candace Owens has credited several different people for introducing her to George Farmer. She credited Russell Brand for introducing her to George Farmer first.
And apparently he asked you to marry him 19 days after you met, which is very English.
Yes,
That
Russell Brand was our Cupid.
Really?
Yeah, he was.
Well, let's hear this, because I'm fascinated. 19, so what happened? You guys meet where?
So a buddy of
This is George, your husband.
Yeah, Turning Point UK was hosting an event. George was there. I didn't get to meet him. I then went to do Russell Brand's podcast on the countryside, and through a lot of miscommunication, nobody had told me that my now husband was hosting a massive dinner with like major players in politics, like Douglas Murray was there that night. You know, all of these fantastic people. So I was 3 hours late because I was with Russell Brand doing his Under the Skin podcast. And this is amazing. This is when he was a communist. You know, this was the old Russell Brand. And then my assistant kind of comes in and is like, "There's a massive dinner for you," and I'm like, "I have to go. There's a random guy named George Farmer hosting a dinner for me." Jumped in the car, went down to Belgravia. 3 hours late, and my husband's just plying everyone with red wine. Like, is this woman even coming?
Okay, so that story she's telling right there about Russell Brand being her Cupid and that she met him through Russell Brand, that doesn't even make sense because she's saying she was at Russell Brand's house hanging out, and then her assistant came in and said, "Hey, there's this random guy that's holding a dinner for you," right? And so she's like, "Oh, I didn't even know. I was just hanging out with Russell Brand." That's not Russell Brand introducing you to him. You're hanging out with Russell Brand, and then somebody says you have to go to this dinner. That's not the same thing. So that doesn't even make sense what she's saying.
And I don't know, I just locked eyes with him and just knew that I was going to marry him. It was totally insane. Literally, and it's funny because his best man then read the text messages that George was sending to him, like, "I'm going to marry this girl." And I was sending messages to my sister, like, "I'm going to marry
From
this
that
guy."
night?
Like, locked eyes. If this is like a true rom-com story featuring Russell Brand, yeah.
Was it just the accent?
No,
You can be clear.
no, everyone had an accent.
Do you find this accent irresistible? Is that where we
Americans
are?
do like an English accent, so I will say that it is a plus. But everyone there had an accent. It was just his face. He didn't even speak to me. He was so nervous. And then he flew to meet me the following week at Turning Point USA's big conference they have every December. And it was just, I just knew it was the strangest thing. And then he proposed to me. We didn't even kiss, nothing. Didn't even know if he had a girlfriend. And
You've not even had a date, really?
We didn't even have a date. We had our first kiss in Terminal 5.
Really? That's very romantic.
It is.
It's like Love Actually.
It is Love Actually.
But John Mappin, who has ties to Jeffrey Epstein, also takes credit for introducing Candace to George Farmer. And Candace has openly given him credit to introducing them. It reads, "That auspicious and star-crossed night on 11th December 2018, when you, Candace, and Charlie first arrived in London to launch Turning Point to this nation and changed our lives' trajectories, including that of tpusa. When George arrived at this tpusa function, I recall uttering the now memorable words, 'I don't believe you have met Lord Farmer's son, Candace.' One has made a few introductions in one's time, but the introduction of Turning Point to the United Kingdom that night, the introduction of Charlie's and your philosophy and way of thinking, and most joyfully our introduction of you to your loving husband, George, ranks up there for sure." This account by John Mappin completely contradicts the story that Candace Owens told Piers Morgan.
Okay, so John Mappin is actually a really weird guy, and he is ultra wealthy and connected elite in England, and he's the one who really pushed to get this Turning Point UK thing started with some other people, but like he was one of the main ones. He's like this really bizarre dude that's like really into Scientology and has a castle that he calls the Camelot Castle, and he flies a giant Q flag over it because he's really into Q and pushing Q. He posts like the most bizarre stuff, but one of the most bizarre things I find about him, and there is like all these weird connections that I'm not going to be able to get into in this video, but I do plan on making a video someday about all this crazy stuff I've found regarding him. But let me just show you something that I find really interesting. George Farmer's connection to Mappin refers to his association with John Mappin, a high-profile British businessman, eccentric, and political figure. John Mappin is the owner of Camelot Castle Hotel in Tyngell, Cornwall. The hotel has become a bit of a headquarters for a specific niche of British and American right-wing figures. Mappin frequently hosts events there for figures in the MAGA and Brexit movements. The connection: Farmer and his wife Candace Owens have been part of the social and political circuit that overlap with Mappin's court at Camelot Castle. While Farmer maintains a more corporate image, Mappin provides the more activist and theatrical energy for the same political causes. Okay, so he was that candidate. Mappin financially boosted his candidacy when he ran. They both represent the shift of British individuals moving away from the traditional Conservative Party toward more populist, anti-establishment, right-wing politics, which is the same thing the BAT movement is doing, which is the same thing that Tucker Carlson and all of them are doing. There is this giant movement that connects the Europeans and the aristocrats and some of the royal family members to these right-wing influencers who are pushing populism, like national populism, like a form of right-wing populism, but then also like some of them are really into like monarchy and other weird stuff. So this is the weird thing that I found when I was looking into all these connections with right-wing influencers and Europeans. I asked this because I had it in like a whole nother document that would have taken forever to find. But can you outline how Candace turned left to right overnight? Mappin introduced her to her aristocrat husband, then she turned Catholic, and that Eva, that Dutch influencer, literally has the same story arc. And it's not just them, there's other ones too, but we're just focusing on this for right now. The career trajectory you're describing has become a recognizable pattern in the transatlantic right-wing media sphere. Critics often refer to it as the trad wife pivot or the aristocratic rebranding. Both Candace Owens and Eva Vlaardingerbroek, I can't say that, it's Dutch. Okay, but she's been on Tucker Carlson's show. She has blonde hair. Followed remarkably similar paths involving a rapid political shift, an introduction to an aristocrat or high society husband via a common mentor, and a high-profile conversion to Catholicism. Both women began their political lives in spaces that were either apolitical or leaned away from the hard right positions they hold today. Candace Owens in 2015 ran a lifestyle blog called Degree 180 and was frequently critical of conservative politics and Donald Trump. Her overnight shift happened in 2017 after a controversy involving her anti-cyberbullying database. She claims the left turned on her and she pivoted to become a pro-Trump firebrand almost instantly. Eva Vlaardingerbroek, while she was always conservative, she was initially seen as more of a standard European academic. Her shift into the shield maiden of the right. So John Mappin on his Twitter and stuff calls Candace Owens and this woman and others shield maidens and other really weird stuff. Like he calls them the shield maidens of freedom and truth and stuff like that. It's really bizarre. A label she embraced happened rapidly during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Dutch farmer protests, where her rhetoric became significantly more populist and anti-globalist. John Mappin, the eccentric owner of Camelot Castle and vocal Trump QAnon supporter, has acted as a social bridge for both women into the British upper class. The Owens introduction. Mappin was a key supporter during the launch of Turning Point UK. It was through this high society pro-Trump network in London that Candace met George Farmer. They were engaged within weeks of meeting. The Eva introduction. In a 2003 article for The Spectre, it was explicitly noted that John and Irina Mappin hosted a lunch to introduce Eva whatever her last name is, to their social circle. Like Candace, Eva's entry into the British right was heavily facilitated by the Mappin's hospitality at Camelot Castle. The marriages served to solidify their status, moving them from internet commentators to members of the European conservative elite. Candace and George Farmer. George is the Oxford-educated son of a life peer and a former member of the Bullingdon Club. The marriage gave Candace a direct line to British old money and high-level finance. Eva and Francisco Gargalo di Castello Lelenti. In July 2024, Eva married Francesco, an Italian lawyer from an aristocrat family, the House of Castile Lentini. I'm sorry for every Italian out there. Much like George Farmer, Francisco represented a blend of traditional European nobility and modern right-wing legal activism. Okay, the Catholic conversion, the final step in both arcs, was a public embrace of the traditional Catholicism, framing their political battles as spiritual ones. Eva, she was received into the Catholic Church in April 2023, choosing the name Joan after Joan of Arc. She cited the spiritual vacuum of the West and the COVID-19 pandemic as her wake-up calls. Candace, after years of being non-denominational Christian, Candace followed a very similar path, officially announcing her conversion to Catholicism in April 2024, exactly 1 year after Eva. And George Farmer converted to Catholicism, like around the time or just shortly before he met Candace. He was not a Catholic, or he was not raised Catholic. So let me show you this Okay, so this is just a little comparison table arc. If you guys want to snap a picture of that, let me make it big. Okay, so you've got Candace Owens, a liberal-leaning blogger, Pivot Point 2017, the mentor John Mappin, the husband George Farmer, British aristocrat, Catholic conversion 2024. Eva, Dutch legal academic 2020 was the Pivot Point John Mappin through his castle. And then she married this Italian aristocrat, converted to Catholicism in 2023. And there are many others as well that follow this sort of same story arc. And so I think that's really, really, really weird. I find that really strange, like legitimately, actually. Now, I don't know if that means anything. This is just dot connecting that could just, just because it doesn't mean that there's a causation, just because there's correlation. So, we have to explore it more and think about it more. So I'm certainly not saying like that's completely 100% fact. It's just a really strange thing. And it's also really strange, all these weird connections. And now that I saw his connection with that news site, I actually just asked it to look into that really quick. And because this is really interesting, because it's actually a lot of these people have connections to media news and stuff like that, which is weird. Or they have their own news channels and stuff, but then they're connected to weird people. So anyway, George Farmer's involvement with GB News is currently one of his most significant business roles, though it has been characterized by some recent shifts. Here's the breakdown of his connection to the channel: board membership and resignation. George was appointed to the board of All Perspectives Ltd, the parent company of GB News, on September 27, 2003. His role placed him at the top level of the channel's corporate governance. The recent change, according to official UK government filings, Farmer resigned as a director on January 30th, 2026. Current status: while he is no longer a director on the board, he remains a significant shareholder in the company. Let me add that to the stage. Farmer's appointment in 2023 was seen as a move to bring American-style media strategy to the UK. Having run Parler in the US, Farmer was viewed as a specialist in the anti-woke free speech platforms. Critics argued his role was to help GB News lean further into the populist, opinion-led format that has made outlets like Fox News successful in the United States. During Ofcom battles, during his time on the board, GB News faced more than a dozen investigations by Ofcom, the UK media regulator, regarding impartiality. Farmer was a vocal defender of the channel's right to broadcast alternative viewpoints without government interference. The Farmer family has deep financial ties to the station. Lord Michael Farmer, George's father, a billionaire hedge funder manager and conservative peer, was one of the early major investors in GB News. George's shareholding in late 2024, George Farmer was officially listed as a new shareholder in his own right, further solidifying his personal financial stake in the channel's success, regardless of his board seat. Conflict of interest: because Farmer is married to Candace Owens, his position on the board of a major news outlet led to questions about cross-pollination of their brands. Media analysts pointed out that GB News frequently covers topics championed by Candace Owens. Some saw Farmer's board position as a way to ensure a platform for their specific brand of transatlantic conservatism. Okay, so Farmer's recent resignation from the board suggests he may be shifting his focus back towards his business interests in the United States or his new ventures in religious media, like his attempted acquisition of the Catholic Herald. Guys, what is going on? Like, this is crazy stuff. This is just wild. I'm just finding out this information, so it's like connecting dots to all this other stuff I was looking into, and I'm like, while maintaining his influence at GB News as a primary investor. Okay, and then I asked when he became Catholic. So it's around the time that he was with Candace that he became more Catholic. He said he was before, like in college, but he was like, oh, but then I really picked it up when I got with Candace. But I don't know. I think that, like, people will do stuff like that to seem legitimate. So they'll like become this ultra trad Catholic or ortho bro to seem like a legitimate right leaning person to people on the right, to like their audiences and stuff, you know? So there's just this weird thing going on. And then there's also like these Catholic like sects, like branches of Catholicism that are just weird. They're like cults almost. There's like the Opus Dei, the Blue Army, the SPX, weird stuff. And they're connected to some of them, you know, some of these people that I'm looking into. So it's just really bizarre. Okay. Oh, and you have to remember that the Catholic Church and the monarchies went hand in hand. So a lot of these people push monarchies. So it makes sense that they would also then be Catholic, right? Anyway, moving on, let's go back to that video.
Candace gives another good story. Alex Jones telling his audience my husband is MI6 is hilarious. Guess he left the part out where I met my husband through InfoWars host Paul Joseph Watson. Here's a picture from that fateful night in December of 2018. Candace Owens gets very defensive when confronted with the inconsistencies of her stories pertaining to her meeting her husband. So she strings together all 3 instances of them being introduced in 2 days, where they're somehow introduced over and over and over again without actually being introduced, to then falling in love at first sight, or technically second sight. But that's not how George Farmer recalls it.
That I knew her. So she was giving a speech in London. And she was giving a speech at the Royal Automobile Club, which is a club in Pall Mall in London. And I was in the audience. We met, we shook hands, and I just knew, kind of, when I met her, I was like, this is a woman who, she just commanded a power. It was very difficult to describe. Nothing romantic was said, you know, between that day and the day that we got engaged. Nothing romantic was said at all. You know, there was no overtures. Like we didn't go for dinner, like we didn't take it, nothing,
flowers,
no, nothing, yeah, nothing, exactly. And
So just to give everybody context, we got engaged after 2.5 weeks, maybe.
I think it was about that time, yeah.
Right,
Right, yeah.
right, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, whirlwind romance, I believe.
I know.
Nothing had been said. Like there'd be no romantic overtures at all at any of this point. It had all just been very kind of above board and talking about politics and engaging in kind of philosophical conversations. And then at the end of December, we started. I called her a couple of times just to kind of chat, and again, you know, just had these long, like prolonged conversations, which were mainly about politics and trying to understand what she wanted to do in life. And at the end of December, I was actually flying to South Africa at the time for New Year's, and I called her and I just said, listen, I know this is completely crazy and we've just met, but how do you feel about getting married to me?
Just real quick. I missed the bit where there was any sort of...
There was literally nothing romantic had been said up to this point.
Okay.
I mean, literally
nothing.
Sorry,
so I missed nothing.
We hadn't gone on a date. We had not talked about marriage or the future or anything like that.
All right.
And she said yes.
No.
Yeah,
come on.
she did.
That didn't happen.
Yeah,
You're making it up.
You don't have to look very far or very deep to kind of come to the conclusion that this was a political arranged marriage. Many people are speculating that Candace Owens was in love with Charlie, but it's also been speculated that Candace is bi. Candace has been accused of being bi by Milo and Raheem, who is assaulted by her husband.
Hey guys, it's me, Samantha. Who is this? I'm so perfect and pretty and skinny. And yeah, maybe Candace got a little chubby in quarantine, but at least I'm still cute because I'm Sammy Schwab.
Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. There's really no way to know, unless some of her past partners come forward. But what's very interesting is in 2016, Candace Owens wrote an article. A lot of straight women are settling down with gay men. Here's why. She wrote a lot of weird articles, but I think this really says a lot, especially considering her current husband. Like any political marriage, you're gonna cover for one another, especially when you've done something wrong. Just like Bill and Hillary, or Nancy Pelosi and her husband Paul, weird things seem to happen surrounding the husband that later comes to light. Like George Farmer being arrested for a DUI. He was caught walking down the side of the road after crashing his car, and he was carrying a firearm with him, which is so Paul Pelosi. The rumors circulating Candace and George are coming from people.
Okay, so that is recent too, like with them living in Nashville recently. I know it's going to come up in one of the series of that article we're reading. So, and it'll have more details, but that's a recent thing where he got in a car accident, left the scene, and then was walking down the road, and he obviously had a gun on him when he was arrested. And then it was like buried.
Who knew them? People who had connections to them. And one by one, some people have been brave enough to come forward with what they know. But there's no telling how many people are sitting on information that could potentially destroy what they've built. It seems a great many people are afraid to come forward with their information, much like some other political marriages we know.
Okay, so let's learn a little bit more about that weird society that he was belonging to.
So one of the initiation processes for getting into that club is burning a £50 note.
Rothschild, Nathaniel Rothschild.
Mr. Rothschild.
Nathaniel Rothschild.
Mr. Rothschild. No, Mr. Rothschild.
And they are willing to go for power.
I don't know, there's no sound. There's no sound in this section of the video. Not sure why.
individuals are not just people who are fighting and clamoring for power. These are individuals who have power. They have money, they have resources, and they are willing to go as far as they can to cause chaos. Many people have been looking at Candace Owens and all the chaotic ways she has and wondering, where is George? Probably George is behind the scenes handling all the shaking. Probably she has said on her show, I have handlers, and she dropped it like a hot potato and no one cared to check again. George Farmer grew up in chaos. He knows the aspect and how the model of chaos works, and he is probably using his wife to cause chaos in the United States and in the world at large. How do you think this happens? It just happens like this. And many people will think that this is too much, maybe it's exaggerated. Let me tell you, a movie was made, and that movie is titled The Riot Club. That movie is chaotic. When I tell you chaotic, I mean extremely chaotic. And even when the actors, directors, producers, and writers of the movie went to do fact-checking with individuals who know more about the Bullingdon Club, they asked them, do you think this is too much? They said, no, you have not even scratched the surface. Actually, that's a child's joke. That's to tell you how serious this is. And if you think I'm joking, I'm going to drop the trailer of this particular movie, a little aspects of it, and we will talk to the lead characters and their interviews, which they had with individuals who were well known and well linked to the Bullingdon Club, the director and writers, and their takes on what the Bullingdon Club is and how it inspired this movie, and how this movie still was not strong enough to scratch the surface of the activities of this Christian boy, George Farmer's club, the Bullingdon Club. But, well, he is the old retired British persona. Okay, let's see how retired and old and conservative that is.
2010 in the Riot Club.
They don't know when to stop.
The inspiration for the Riot Club is, of course, the Bullingdon, or Buller to its members. Founded in the 1780s at Oxford University, originally devoted to horse racing, but more recently to lavish banquets and the smashing of plates and other breakables. The club's diversity still tends to range from Eton to Eton, and its former members include the men today running London, the country, and the economy.
I am sick to death of poor people!
In the film, the Buller members are portrayed as cravenly immoral thugs and toffs. The least obnoxious is played by Max Irons, son of Jeremy, and I started by asking him whether it wasn't all a bit exaggerated.
I think they can't exist. These people can't exist. But we did our research, and they do. And in fact, I think you took the first draft up to Cambridge.
Yeah.
And the feedback was, it's not extreme enough.
Yeah.
You know, this stuff happens.
What does it say about Britain that these sort of dining clubs still exist today?
I think that we still live in a worryingly unequal society. There are people out there who think that their wealth and their class give them license to behave however they like, and I think that's kind of the central metaphor of the story, is these boys believe that because they can afford to pay for damage, they can do whatever they like.
And the fact that 3 former members of the Bullingdon are running the Treasury, the country, and the City of London. What does that tell you?
Well, I think it tells you that membership of one of these clubs is a stepping stone to high office.
But there's equality in terms of finances, and then there's the inequality of class, which this is what this film is really about. Do you think that the kind of visceral inequality of class, the poison of class, is more pronounced now than it was, I don't know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago?
Yeah, because I think class and wealth go hand in hand in that respect. And we seem to be living in a world in which if you don't have enough money to get you to the places where you need to go, then there isn't enough help available. There's a kind of, since the recession, a kind of leeching of kindness.
You heard her. They took the script down to Cambridge and they told them, this thing, you're just playing with it, okay? Take it up a notch. Ramp it up a notch. And that is how chaotic the Bullingdon Club was. This club has been linked to the aspect of very chaotic behavior, disturbing entire systems. And so if you have members of this club running Britain and handling finance in Britain, and you see them, they are in other sectors in the world doing things. Candace talks about people leaving one country to the other to cause chaos. Meanwhile, her husband left the UK and entered the US and is causing an entire chaotic scenario there allegedly in the way of the Bullingdon Club. Because I don't understand how you can tell me that a man who was this Christian, this deep in Catholicism, and all this lovely, beautiful essence of him ended up being in such a club, carrying out such activities, and it is stated, Your joining that club is not only about your wealth. Yes, George Farmer, his father ticked the box of him coming from a wealthy family. The next thing was for him to be willing to participate in the activities, okay? And we are going ahead. You will hear about the initiation process in no time, okay? You burning a 50 pound in front of a beggar, that's just, if that's not elitism, what else is that? Please let me know. What do you think that is? Just being friendly?
Yeah, so the Bullingdon Club is this exclusive elitist society at the University of Oxford. It's only open to sort of the sons of the heirs to fortune and fame, so no women allowed. And it's infamous for the conduct of the members of the club, who go to the local pubs and restaurants and generally trash the place. They behave pretty appallingly. They dress up in the aristocratic garb and basically play the fool.
So I don't know if anyone has ever seen the movie, what's it called? What is it called? The movie A Clockwork Orange, where they dress up weird and then they've got like golf clubs or something and they're like beating things and being super chaotic and crazy. I think that character in like some way just is also representative of this Bullingdon Club.
And yeah, the book is basically an analogy of this. Of course, Boris Johnson, David Cameron, George Osborne were all former members of the Bullingdon Club. But the book is an analogy for how they acted when they were part of the club, trashing restaurants. That mentality has basically seeped through to government, and they've ransacked the nation, they've trashed the nation, they've treated us all like they do, the silverware and the staff who serve them at these restaurants in Oxford.
So one of the initiation processes for getting into that club is burning a £50 note.
Allegedly. Yeah.
Allegedly. And if I've not mentioned it before, everything in this video, my podcast, my mouth, my everything is allegedly. My name is allegedly Nimo also. Let's continue. As you've seen, the members of this club have developed a habit of chaos. They've developed that behavior that tells them that we don't care. Anything we can destroy and throw money at it. And that is the mentality they go with into the world, ruling the world, running the world, politics, money, podcast. They just throw chaos at the world, and if the world comes to fix it, we throw money at it. And now we have a woman who is running her mouth on the podcast every day. She's #1 podcast in the world, not for nothing. I have said before, if George Farmer knew Andrew Tate before Andrew Tate became who Andrew Tate was, and then now Candace Owens has made #1 podcaster in the world. Remember 2022, Andrew Tate was the most researched person in the world on Google, right? Good. Now Candace Owens is the #1 podcaster in the world. George Farmer, what is your new
Okay, so Andrew Tate and George Farmer are friends that go way, way back before Andrew Tate became what he is today. Because Andrew Tate he's part American, part English. So part of his childhood he spent in England. And he was supposedly really poor. And a pimp and a drug dealer. So how did George Farmer know Andrew Tate? That's what I've always wondered ever since I found out about that years ago, and there has been no good answer for it. So since Candace Owens wants answers so much, is asking questions and she wants the answers to those questions, I have a question for Candace and George Farmer. How did George Farmer know Andrew Tate, a low-level pimp and drug dealer, by his own words when he lived in the UK during the time that you say George Farmer and him were friends? How did he know him? That's what I want to know. Why would a low-level pimp and drug dealer know this guy who's super elitist?
Product. Which one will be your new product? Allegedly. Okay, guys, please like this video. Don't you see what your girl's doing? I'm doing so much work. Please like the video. Share the video. Share this video. I would like Candace Owens to see this video and explain to us how her husband is this martyrdom of soft-spokenness, but is also a mentor of chaos.
There's strict rules of omerta, so secrecy, around the club, which I think speaks to its sort of privilege and exclusivity. There's a brilliant film, actually, you've probably seen it, The Riot Club, that came out a few years ago, which dramatised and perhaps exaggerated what goes on in the club. But in the film, one of the members is the blame's pinned on him for one of their nights of debauchery where, they trash a restaurant and beat up a pub landlord. They pin the blame on one individual, and then a current cabinet minister comes to see him the day after and says, "Don't worry, old chap, we'll sort you out."
Right.
And that's kind of the premise, that no matter how badly you behave within this club, you'll always have mates in high places. And that's kind of what we've seen during the pandemic and the post-pandemic years as well, is, corruption, arguably, and certainly cronyism, jobs for the boys. And we've seen those who've broken the rules rewarded with public contracts, for one, and millions of pounds in jobs for speeches when they've left high office. So what's Boris Johnson made now in the few months since he's left Downing Street? £5 million.
Nice.
Yeah. While all the rest of the country has to suffer with the aftershocks of COVID and the cost of living crisis. And that's the Bullingdon Club mentality.
Why is the Bullingdon Club banned from convening within 15 miles of Oxford? The Bullingdon Club is a private all-male dining club for Oxford University students. It is known for its wealthy members, grand banquets, and vandalism of restaurants and students' rooms. The club selects its members not only on the grounds of wealth and willingness to participate, but also by reference to their education. In 2013, the Daily Mirror reported an unsubstantiated claim that the Bullingdon Club's initiation ceremony required members to burn a £50 note in front of a beggar. Former members include 2 kings of England, Edward VII and Edward VIII, and 3 prime ministers, David Cameron, Archibald Primrose, 5th Earl of Rosebery, and Boris Johnson. On the 12th of May, 1890, after dinner, Bullingdon members smashed almost all the glass of the lights and 468 windows in Peckwater Quad of Christchurch, along with the blinds and doors of the building, and again on the 20th of February, 1927. As a result of such events, the club was banned from convening within 15 miles of Oxford.
Many of you will now be asking, how do you know that he was there? You don't have any evidence that George Farmer was there. George Farmer has just been this innocent Catholic boy who's been praying to the Lord, worshiping Jesus, and taking care of his wife and children. How can you say he's part of it? One, it's on his Wikipedia, like I've said before. If Candace Owens did not want that there, he will not be there. Every other thing that talks about him in public talks about it. The only person who doesn't talk about it is George Farmer. He just intentionally, he and his wife intentionally avoid talking about the Bullingdon Club. Oh yes, they do. Because they're trying to portray that image of this fine wine, beautiful couple, soft behavior. And then Candace Owens, the loud-mouthed, bombastic Americana. White George is pretending to be the soft-spoken, very quiet and reserved man. But he has been involved in so much chaos. Okay, now let me show you. A journalist has taken time, decades in the making, to verify most of these pictures. And there are very few that have not been verified. But here we are going to show you a picture of George Farmer in this. And he is not only there. Oh, no. He's in South Africa doing what? Hunting. You remember when Candace Owens just got married to her husband? She couldn't stop bragging about how much she and her husband enjoyed hunting in Africa. Please, people should leave our continent alone. What is it now? All right, let's do this.
Now, I know that one of the things that's really helped in your research massively is discovering a whole load of these Bullingdon Club photographs, because one of the first pictures of David Cameron and George Osborne in the Bullingdon Club was published in the Daily Mail, and I think they got sued for it. So there's obviously a great deal of sensitivity about publishing these pictures of Bullingdon Club photos. People saying, well, it's a private photograph, you're not allowed to, and if you do, we're going to take you to court. And so there's been a reluctance to publish those photographs. But I know you've managed to get loads of these old photos of the Bullingdon Club boys. How did you manage to do that?
So, well, I did quite a large article on about exactly what happened in the Independent about 8 or so months ago. A lot of them were just hanging on the walls of a tailor called Ian Ravenscroft. Now, that's the tailor that makes the very famous Bullingdon outfit, which is reputed to cost around £3,500. And interestingly, I also dug up an old pamphlet called The Rules of the Club, and from 1850. The uniform back then is exactly the same as it was and it is now. Now, effectively, a lot of these photos, some of them circulate online. You can find them in very old image archives. A lot of them are in college archives, so not really publicly accessible except to researchers or professional journalists. But I guess what surprised me was that no one had really done this before, even for the photos that were in public domain, which includes some very famous people.
Okay, so as you guys can see, me just scrolling through here, there's a lot of information about the Bullingdon Club. Like here, Bullingdon Club, Britain, the ransacking of a nation. That's an hour long. There is obviously conspiracy theories around it because it's sort of like our bones and crossbones, skull and bones society and stuff like that. The Bullingdon Club boot camp for Britain's rulers. So you guys can look into that more, but I just find it extremely telling that Candace Owens sits around and she makes up all these conspiracy theories about the elite and stuff that our politicians are up to that she's claiming, and the globalists, etc., when her husband is connected to that entire world, to London, to finance. That's globalism. Then he's connected to the Bullingdon Club. He's connected to Oxford University, and he has a lot of money. He's an elite person who could be behind something that we don't understand. Because a lot of this stuff is beyond our comprehension. We look through a glass darkly, as the Bible says. It's just so beyond anything. And then the scams that he's been involved in. Now we find out he's behind that news channel in England that's trying to bring her conspiracy world stuff to England and cause chaos there probably for the nation. So anyway, it's just nuts. Let's get back to our article. When I started publishing House and Habit in 2011, it was a solo enterprise and it largely remained that way. But as my coverage of the 2024 election began pulling me in multiple directions, I brought on a few freelancers to publish here, easing my concern that subscribers might feel cheated if I didn't post often enough. One ran an obsessive account tracking Kanye West's every online move. The other I met at the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. She had a temper that flared quickly and a fast and loose approach to invoicing. She once billed me for the time she spent sitting in the pews at the Catholic Church of St. John the Divine after I invited her, New York-based already, as my guest to Joan Didion's funeral. When the invoice came through, I replied simply, "Sorry, I do not pay people to hang out with me." A couple years later, when she reappeared asking for another shot, I was quick to forgive her, despite signs that her behavior with me wasn't isolated. Another writer whose work I respected had fired her as well. That arrangement ended on bad terms too, in part because of her tendency to overcharge for things she was not specifically assigned. As the months went on, both of these writers grew increasingly entitled. I know writers are a lazy breed, and I like that. I also liked that they operated so far outside the new world I was entering up to a point. This Candace expose sounded like it might be worth the trouble the freelancers created. I looked at Mitchell and Olivia across the table. Olivia said she thought it was unwise to plan to publish a story that was predetermined to be critical when I hadn't yet read the draft submitted by the freelancer. "You don't know if it's good. You don't know what it even is," she said. "So how could you know you'll want to run it?" I was conflicted. The independent part of independent media mattered more to me than the media part. It was also true that the more stories I covered, the closer I got to the people inside those stories, the more complicated everything became, and the more constrained I felt. It's easy to sit in a room by yourself and make judgments into a camera. It's harder to judge the world when you live inside of it. It annoyed me to be criticized by someone who didn't seem to care about the complications and nuance because she lived in her own world. "Why is Candace beyond criticism?" I asked. "You can criticize anybody fairly," Olivia said. She arched her eyebrows dramatically, which was a way of reminding me that I hadn't been so fair to her. In response to that, she had annoyingly not been angry with me. Instead, she was prone to reminding me of her point of view. Fairness means coverage of Mother Teresa and coverage of Adolf Hitler should meet the same standard, and she recited facts about famous libel lawsuits, and she made me read The Journalist and the Murderer. Mitchell had a different objective. He was not concerned with fairness. He needed to protect his client. Candace was an ally, he reminded me, but she wouldn't stay that way if I moved forward with plans to publish criticism of her. It would be war, he warned me. God, who does this woman think she is? Hillary Clinton? Like, my God. His suggestion was that I abandon the piece entirely and pivot instead to persuading RFK to soften his stance on poppers. Federal health officials had just raided a poppers factory, halting production. This spelled immediate practical trouble for the poppers industry and theoretical political trouble for the most powerful health official in the federal government, who risked further alienating segments of the homosexual electorate who love poppers. We all got distracted by the poppers for a while. Mike sat there kicking me under the table as we listened to Mike describe skipping over all that, the details of the raid and the political implications of the raid. Mike ordered another tequila. Mitchell presented the poppers blow up as a strategic opportunity for me, far more worthy of my time than a negative story about his client. If I use my influence with RFK to change his position on a drug beloved by the gay community, I would earn their favor. "You can save poppers," Mitchell said. The four of us drove back together to my office in the old bus Mike kept parked on site. Regular readers are likely familiar with the bus, which has loomed strange and symbolic for me ever since Mike found it in the English countryside in 2022 and had it shipped to our shores against my half-hearted objections. The bus was full of contradictions. I considered it an intrusion and irritation, and also a physical representation of so much that I love about Mike. As I learned more about it, it began to feel like an omen, though I didn't know if it was good or bad. The bus was also full of stray objects, including a set of old English teacups and free weights. Mike drove, I sat shotgun, and Mitchell and Olivia sat in the back. It was a bumpy ride. After clipping a curb, Mitchell and Olivia jolted nearly to the ceiling. I looked behind me. Olivia was laughing, and Mitchell was hanging on for dear life. When Mike pulled into the parking lot behind my office, Mitchell jumped out and practically sprinted to his car. He fled so fast that he left his cardigan behind. Olivia came upstairs, and I opened my laptop so she could review the article at the center of the debate. I still hadn't read it, and I trusted she was a good barometer for both its quality and its legal risk. She was always reading drafts of stories stories or scripts for friends and offering notes. I read early chapters of American Canto for her, as did her other friends. This isn't a conspiracy, it's being a writer in a community with other writers. It only took a few moments reading the draft before Olivia started shaking her head. No, she said, peering over the top of the laptop. She informed me the draft started with a long meditation on the Chinese Year of the Snake, which would be fine, she said, except that the freelancer had identified the wrong dates as the start of the Year of the Snake, which would be fine too, she said, except that once the date was corrected, the Year of the Snake was no longer relevant to the introduction at all. She kept reading. No, she said, I mean, no way. In her opinion, the facts were the first problem, and the writing was a close second. With nearly 500,000 people reading, she told me that I had to be more discerning about what I shared. She closed my laptop and told me plainly that the draft wasn't something I could publish without inviting justified ridicule and credible lawsuit. Her advice was to scrap it entirely unless it could be substantially reworked. If you're going to take a shot at someone, she said, it has to be a clean shot, not a mess that undercut me instead of the subject of the criticism. And also, it should be readable, like a starting point, she said, rolling her eyes. The next day, I cautiously relayed portions of this criticism to the freelancer. In doing so, I credited Olivia as the one who had intervened to spare us a lawsuit, since I knew this writer admired Olivia and had been starstruck when she met her once. Okay, so this is how Candace knew that they said, if you're going to take a shot at someone, and this was, of course, metaphorically, right? It better be clean. And she was like saying you shouldn't do the article anyway. This person who's about to get upset with her boss is going to go to Candace and tell her all that, and Candace is going to flip it around into this insane, crazy story. The writer flew off the rails. I was offended by the idea that I was under any obligation to publish anyone else's work, especially work that wasn't worth readers' time, but I tried a few times to calm her down. The premise of a draft is that it isn't final. The process of submitting a draft is by definition a back and forth. I told her Olivia would help edit the piece if she wanted. That didn't help either. She told me to F off. I fired her in response.
So the Bobby Kennedy blackmail story is currently breaking in many directions all across the internet. And American politics is not going to be the same after this weekend. That's not hyperbole. This is not just a hook. And I don't really know where to start. But this is the kind of story that I've gotten enough calls from enough people tonight, and enough people, there's enough going on that I feel like we need to make a video right now to keep some people safe and to get as much as we all know out on the internet right now so that everyone can be safe. And the best place for everyone to start is at Candace's video that she put up today, that she very aptly titled One Nation Under Blackmail. Go watch it. She does a way better job of explaining a bunch of what's going on than I could. But as soon as I was like 10 minutes into it, and then I started getting phone calls from sources telling me more information that is correct.
Okay, so she stole that title from Whitney Webb. Really?
Corroborating and taking it even further than what is exposed in that video. And I have sources telling me that there are people in like media and around Bobby that know about this and know it's coming and are trying to protect him and save him from this. But it is past that, and there is no saving anyone from this, I think. And we just have to deal with what's about to happen. So I'm going to leave all of that.
This guy is such a lunatic. Man, I'm telling you. The following day, Candace Owens escalated with another episode of Candace that relied on accounts of the disgruntled freelancer as well as my former best friend who had worked for me as my photographer on the campaign trail. She used new fabrications and smears from these new sources to support her ongoing case against me and to introduce her audience to Olivia Nuzzi, a compelling new object of her scorn. Prior to our feud, Candace had never known these women. She hadn't verified whether these sources were trustworthy. She hadn't verified whether their claims were legitimate. She hadn't tried to contextualize why these people had volunteered themselves as sources in the first place. Instead, she took their claims and recklessly amplified them to her audience of millions. The fallout with my friend was, in reality, painful and complicated and years in the making. It was also highly sensitive. It involved our children, our families, addiction, a toxic relationship, and people and issues that had no place in public drama, which made it nearly impossible for me to defend myself publicly. They used this to their advantage, knowing that if I revealed the truth behind our fallout, I would be instantly condemned for it. Yet Candace took no issue airing fragmented details of my private life that she didn't understand or care to understand, even after I provided evidence that there was more to the story, even after I begged her to stop. After declining my calls, she took it a step further by publicizing information I had shared with her privately as a desperate attempt to stop her attacks, and used it to support her case against my morality and trustworthiness. My text with Candace. It made no sense. Candace was taking shots at me based on shots I didn't allow the freelancer to take against Candace, and the shots Candace was taking were aimed by the freelancer who had wanted to take shots at Candace to begin with. Candace either argued or rejected each of my explanations outlined in text. On a slow news week, the story had been gaining traction. She used it to generate attention and profit by involving the rest of the world, turning my private pain into entertainment. I had declined to publish a smear campaign against her on the advice Olivia offered, and I had fired a writer who refused to edit what she wrote, who then connected with Candace to spin a lie claiming I was the one who ordered the hit piece, and she ran with it. She told her viewers Olivia and I were working together to mastermind a smear against her. I offered to appear live on her show to answer whatever questions she had or offer context to these accusations, but she didn't want to talk to me. She wanted to talk about me. And I think that's where we will end it for today. Wow, I really feel like I didn't get to everything that I wanted to, unfortunately. And I feel like this video is already going to be really long, so I apologize for that. And I apologize that we haven't moved farther in the timeline. There's just so much stuff, and I really like to go deep into things and not just give like highlighted like parts of an article or parts of a video. I tried to give more context, and that's what I just like to do. So I'm sorry for the long video. I'm sure that my viewership is just people who like long form anyway. That's what I like on YouTube as well. So anyway, thank you guys for being here. I'm so happy for all the new subscribers. Thank you and welcome to the channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do like and please comment and let me know what you thought about this episode and your thoughts about Candace in general. And I'll see you next time on The Eclectic Journalist.